MIA. Madeline's eyes widen when she spots me. Her hand went over her mouth as she gasped, which made her turn away. "You're naked," she whispered. "I'm sorry, I wanted to talk to the alpha of this pack. My mate has been killed and I need protection." I didn't say anything. My eyes stayed on her while Lila stood up in my head and growled. She doesn't trust her due to Chloe. All I could do was stare, wondering what the hell happened to her. There has been no sighting of her, even though I had no clue what happened to her because of all the I went through. Madeline looked up at me and frowned. "Do you talk?" she asked, which only angered me slightly. I wondered if she ever knew what her sister was like and what she did to me. I still said nothing but looked at her, which seemed to annoy her more. Movement from the side made me look behind to see a guard running up to me but stopping when he spotted me. "Mia, your mother is," he said, but stopped when he took in Madeline. But he growled and let his wolf take over and shift. My eyes stayed on him but looked to Madeline, who had now gone completely white with fear. Turning around, I stepped in front of him and glared. He looked at me and tried to move to get to her, but I stopped him again. I glared down and shook my head. His expression went weary. Lila moved forward and showed herself to him. The guard opened a mind link to me when I declared my loyalty to my uncle and his pack. When I asked how I could do that with this pack, my mother told me it was because of family, the bond we all have. Part of me thought it was more, but no one said anything else. "Your mum is on her way, Mia," he said. But Lila takes full control of my human form, wanting answers. I knew she was only doing this because of what happened earlier and what happened in the pack. She wanted to protect me more now, after everything. Lila growled at him, closing the link to him, but turned her attention to Madeline, whose eyes widened. "What do you want here?" she asked with a snarl. Madeline stares at us in awe but composes herself quickly. "How do you do that?" she said, moving her head to the side. "How are your eyes different colors?" Lila growled, which made Madeline tense. "Don't push me. What do you want here?" she snarled. I would start explaining, or I will leave you to the guard. More are on their way. Madeline shakes in fear but tries to compose herself once more. "Like I said," she said, glancing between the guard and us, "I need to talk to the alpha of this pack. My mate was killed. I need help." "How did he die?" Lila asked. We try to sense if she is telling us the truth, but it is hard to do. Her emotions are all over the place. Madeline looked down once again and let out a breath just as a tear escaped. "My brother killed him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He wanted his pack. I was mated to an alpha. He was the alpha of the Blood Moon Valley pack." She moves slightly and looks up at me, then behind me. "You have to help me. They want to take over all the packs." "You need to leave," a voice said from behind us, which made me look over at him. "Well, that wasn't Mum. We don't help anyone who belongs to." "I know," Madeline said, cutting him off, which only made Alpha Sam growl. But Madeline continued, "You have heard stories of my mother and siblings. Most are true, but I am not like them. They wanted to kill me too, but a guard saved me. He told me to head here. You would help. He also told me that I should tell you everything, but I need to come on the land." "Did they follow you?" my uncle said in a gruff voice. Keeping my eyes on Madeline, I felt my uncle come to my side. I closed my eyes and Lila went back. I opened my eyes to look back at her, which made her eyes widen slightly before she looked at my uncle, who knew I had let some of his alpha aura out. "No, Alpha," Madeline pleaded, which made me realize that she knew who he was now when she bore her neck to him in submission. "Please help me." Before my uncle could say anything, I took a step towards her. Something about the way her emotions were made me want to figure out what was going on with her. I sniffed, letting Lila come forward slightly to do the same. I breathed in her scent. Something hit me. I looked back at her, stunned. "You're pregnant," I said, which made Madeline look back at me in shock. "No, I'm not." I sniff again. She is pregnant. Early days. Lila is pacing. "That pup is of alpha blood," she said. "I'm worried if her family finds out, they not only will kill her, but they may harm that pup too." My heart sank. We couldn't let that happen. That baby was innocent in all this. Shaking my head, I looked at her and smiled. I held my hand for her to take. She looked at it and was reluctant to take it at first, but she took it. I could sense the baby more. I looked at her. "You're of alpha blood." Madeline looked at me with wide eyes. "How do you know that?" she murmured, looking at Alpha Sam, who said nothing. I looked at him, but he gave me a slight nod while the corners of his lips curled up into a knowing smile. I looked back at her and smiled again. "My wolf can sense the pup," I said. "I have a gift of some sort, but you do need to tell us what is going on and why the family you are running from is trying to kill people and take over packs. This is unheard of, especially since they are betas." Madeline nodded. "I will tell you what you need to know," she said, looking over at Alpha Sam but tensed. I felt more eyes on me, which meant more eyes on me, which made me look over at him again. This time he wasn't alone. Next to him were my mother and Gwen, who were both looking on, shocked. My mother looked at me and smiled, even opening a mind link to me. "I'm proud of you," she said, her warmth floating through the link. I said nothing but closed it and gave her a nod. I looked back at Madeline, who stood next to me. "They are the pack members you will have to tell," I said. Madeline nodded at me and looked back at everyone, but mainly at my uncle. "Alpha, I want to tell you everything," she said. "Can we go somewhere more private?" "Yes, the office," he said, turning around. "Come." We all head there now. We all follow my uncle. Mum and Gwen are with him while Madeline and I walk behind. We don't talk. I let her look around to take in the pack. Just a mind link opens from my uncle as pride slips past. "I'm so proud of you, Mia," my uncle said. "Now let's find out what she has to say. But what happens will be up to you." I said nothing. I didn't want to be the one to make decisions about anyone. I wasn't Alpha. Closing the mind link down, Lila came closer. "He wants to make things better for us," she murmured. "He wants to punish those who hurt us, and this is a way he can help." I still said nothing. My mind was racing with everything. That was the first time I had spoken up and defended myself or anyone else in a long time. Lila hummed. "We are being more as one," she murmured. "We will be stronger, and then that pack can watch out." I felt my lips' corners curl slightly but said nothing. Walking back to the pack was silent. But this would be the icing on the cake if we knew more about this family. Hopefully we can stop them, MIA. We arrived at my uncle's office and were all seated around. My eyes went to Madeline, who looked frightened. I took a seat and she sat next to me. My uncle was sorting out some drinks for us while Luna Sadie handed me some shorts and a t-shirt to put on. As every man stared at me, I had to lend one of the guards' shirts to walk back in. I put on the clothes and sat down next to Madeline. Madeline stared at me with sympathy written all over her face. I realized that she noticed my body was covered in scars, but she looked at the big, thick one on my thigh. "How did that happen?" she asked quietly. I could feel some tension in the room from others, but I looked at her with a little smile. "An evil man tried to kill me. He used a prison tool that was laced with wolfsbane. I was lucky to be alive." She looked at me. I think she was trying to figure out what was going on, but the look on her face got to me. "I know you. You were that girl that Chloe hated so much." There was growling coming from the back, and I looked over my shoulder to see Gwen trying to hold back a pissed-looking Sasha. Knowing I had to defuse the situation, I returned to Madeline. "I will tell you whatever you want to know, but you need to tell Alpha Sam and the rest of us what it is, I say. Moving my seat slightly, I kept my eyes on her while I continued. "Most of us here have been affected by Chloe and your mother or others," I said, looking around, "until I returned to you. You said you would tell us everything that happened, so please do." Madeline looks taken back at my hardened face, but I have had enough of everyone mentioning Chloe in everything. The girl was now setting me and Lila off. There was a change in how we were. Whether it was because of what happened over the last few years with the abuse, I wanted to start standing up for myself. Now was the right time to do anything. Lila agreed with me, and the sense of pride swept in. Alpha Sam, my uncle, takes his seat and looks at her. "Well, start talking, please." Madeline looked down at her hands and then back towards me. She keeps her focus on me instead of my uncle. "I best start from the beginning. My father was mated to my mother, but he was ruthless. He loved her and both myself and my brother. He was the alpha to the Midnight Pack," she says. Luna Sadie walks closer to Alpha Sam, sensing her hatred for the pack. He holds her hand, but my focus is on Madeline. "He loved her, but someone killed my mother and kidnapped my brother. I was left on my own. My father locked himself away and didn't want anything to do with me. He blamed me for everything, she said. I could feel her despair, but she continued. But the betas took me in when I was 10. I was just a year older than Chloe, who had 2 older brothers. They made sure I was with both brothers at all times. They kept me by their side. Josephine made me call her mother. I hated it, but I had no choice. My father was locked in his room, dealing with everything that happened. He became a frail old man, and the only person he was allowed to see was his beta. He didn't want to see his own daughter. A sob escaped her as a lone tear escaped. It was hard to be forgotten about, she whispered, looking down at her hands for a moment before she looked back at me and continued. She's in pain, Lila whispered, but I ignored her. My eyes were solely on Madeline. My father was a ruthless man, but when it came to my mother, brother, and me, he doted on us until that day. My brother never returned, and there were no leads on where he was taken. The beta always kept me with his children, she said, just as another lone tear escaped. Madeline stayed quiet for a moment as she gathered her thoughts until her face hardened slightly, and she let out a sigh. Things started to get weird. Josephine started to act out of character. She always made sure no one talked to me. No pack members. They told the other pack members I was living with them because the alpha didn't want or trust me anymore. She thought I wouldn't have known, but I did, she said. Pack members changed and never spoke to me. The betas made sure I was on my own and only with them. They never hurt me, not badly at least. I watched her flinch at her words and look at me quickly, then turned to her hands to continue. I was kept out of everything, especially when it came to my father since he was locked up in his room, but things started going even more strange. What do you mean more strange? Alpha Sam asked. Everyone else was quiet the entire time, but I knew they wanted to know the same, just as I did at what she told us. They have been listening to Madeline, like I have. I have been looking at her the entire time. I was trying to work her out more, whether we could trust what she was saying. I said nothing and kept staring at her, not letting her know what was happening in my head. This was the first time we heard about this family, but it was more about what she went through that struck a code with me. If you believe her story, she was a victim in all this. Lila and I were still trying to figure that one out. Madeline looked at Alpha Sam, her face full of mixed emotions, making it hard to figure out what she was actually thinking or feeling at that precise time. Strange was how they would talk in secret, she said. The beta would leave in the middle of the night and wouldn't come back for hours. No one said a word while she continued. I only found out when I started to notice things, she said. Chloe was friendlier when I was close by, but she seemed to hate me more when she wasn't. It was like she knew how to flick the switch on and off. Her brothers were the same, nice to my face and then not when my back was turned. I only found out the truth when I overheard their conversation one evening about how I was a spoiled brat, and they hated being like this with me. That night changed everything, and I knew I had to find a way to learn more, and that was what I did. I needed to figure out how to see my father, she murmured, looking over at my uncle, and then sighed. I started to ask questions about trying to reconnect with my father, trying to make sense of what he was doing to me and why I was being blamed for others' actions. Madeline looked back at me. Josephine didn't like the questions and even started to get angry with me until one day she snapped. She told me she would have my father tell me exactly what she had been telling me. Madeline looked to the side and drifted off into the distance like she was lost in her own thoughts, but she continued, I didn't believe she would. At that point, I hadn't seen my father in so long, I thought he had forgotten about me. Madeline closed her eyes briefly before she looked back at me. Her face was full of hurt. Well, he did show up to see me. MIA. The office was silent while Madeline continued her story. Well, my father came to Beta's home. No one was around, and I was shocked to see him. We didn't say anything, and all I could do was look at the man I loved more than anything. He had changed before my eyes. My father looked weak, gray, and frail when he entered the house. It was like looking at the old version of my grandfather back when he was alive. A lone tear slipped past till she wiped it with her hand. Lila said nothing, but I knew she was close and listening to what she was saying. I didn't like what I saw, Madeline said quietly. My father came to me like I said, but he didn't look or act like himself. He couldn't stay long, but said something bad would happen as he was not well. I felt the tension in the air at those words. That could mean many things, but I had a funny feeling about where this was going while she continued. He apologized for what had happened and said he had no choice. My father started to get weary and left when he heard someone approaching the house. He told me to be careful and not trust the betas, which I already knew. Madeline looked at me, sadness forming. All I can remember back then was his scent and appearance. It was like he wasn't the same man. His scent had somehow been changed, too. He didn't smell like a wolf. He smelt like something that died. When my father left, she said, I made myself scarce. I had my father's words echoing around in my head. I stayed quiet and pretended to be okay with everything. I pretended to be obedient and listen to the betas, which was never new. I played up to what they wanted from me until I was taken to the pack house one day, and everything changed. Also, that was when I realized all my problems would start. We were all in the office when the beta had a few council members come and assess my father. They concluded that my father was unfit to run the pack, and that the beta should take over. They all agreed. After the council left, everything changed again, she murmured. The beta and Josephine moved into my father's office and room. My father was placed in a section of the pack house for the mentally disturbed wolves. I never got to see him again. I was made to go everywhere with Chloe or one of her brothers. I had to be her best friend and her sister. It was hard, especially when I didn't like the stuff she would do to people, she said, looking at me. There was a hint of guilt on her face with pity. A low growl erupted in my head. She needs to stop feeling sorry for us, Lila muttered, staying close still. I said nothing, knowing I would have to tell Madeline to stop being like that. What has been done has been done. There is no going back. Madeline's voice started back up, bringing me back from my thoughts. Over time, the beta got greedy, she muttered, anger slicing through her. He started to spend everything he ever desired or what his mate wanted, which resulted in many pack members being made homeless. I had to watch my friends and pack members being thrown out just for not doing anything they didn't like. Josephine wanted more money, and so did the beta. After a while, they both started arguing a lot about things, such as he needed to stop being an ass about spending. Then, one day, he came up with a plan for everyone. I wasn't there as I wasn't their daughter, but I tried to listen in on what was going on when I could. I would hide outside the office window or outside the door to listen in on what was being said. They usually made me stay in my room when the family would talk, she said, but I would always find a way around it and listen. I found out they were going to use all the men of the pack to fight in a war amongst other packs. They would lie to them about why they were running out of money, blaming everyone else. If they didn't do what was asked, they would kill them or make them rogues. Listening to that made me want to vomit, but what Chloe came up with was even worse. She wanted to use the women for all the men's needs. Most men liked the beta, especially after my father was declared unfit to rule. He had many loyal followers. They also agreed for the women to become sex objects. A mere sob echoed through the office, making me look at Luna Sadie. I remember her telling us about her pack and what happened to them, especially the women. Madeline looked towards Alpha Sam while she continued. Word got out that one rogue went here to find someone to help him, she said. To help get his mate and family back. The beta was mad and everything. The day you came to me as pack, I realized why I was being held for. She whispered, but cleared her throat to ensure everyone could hear her. Josephine told Chloe and I that we would be going on to another pack before the war comes. The boys were going somewhere else. The whole reason they had me was because of my blood. I was born from an alpha. They would use my bloodline to start a new pack somewhere else. Josephine told me that I would be mated to one of her sons, but she needed to get into Shadow Creek first as there was more potential to take over since Alpha Robert lost his mate and she wanted to make him hers. Anger swirled around inside me, but I controlled myself. How did they know what had happened to Alpha Robert since they were never by? Madeline looked at me with a knowing look. She must have guessed what I was thinking. There was a spy within the pack only the Beta family trusted. That was even worse. A spy? How did no one not realize that? Once everything they had planned was in motion, she said, making me look at her with a stern look. I was made to leave with them, which I had to. We traveled around until Josephine had word the war had started. You know it was my pack that went to your pack, my uncle blurted, which made me look at him. He was beyond annoyed, but we all knew this could happen. My eyes darted to Madeline, who gave us a nod before she continued. I overheard that, she murmured. But Josephine made sure I was out of earshot for the rest until she told me the rest of the plan with me. She told me I had to decide which brother I wanted to be with. I had to choose between them, but didn't want to. I felt an emotion coming from her, which I had never felt before come through her. I couldn't pick either of them since, over the years, they had become more ruthless than their father. They were worse than him. Josephine let the whole thing with the brothers drop. I believe she wanted to scare me, and by goddess, she did. When we arrived at Shadow Creek, Chloe had gotten word from one of the brothers that their father was dead. That was when everything changed again, like she said. And this time, Josephine was in charge of what would happen to us all, and it was even worse than her mate's plan. Madeline, saying everything that had happened for so long made me feel like the world was slowly lifting off my shoulders. I had to tell them everything. Mia had looked at me the entire time. I felt so much remorse for what the Beta family put her through, and even though I wanted to help her, I was still on a tight leash. Shaking my thoughts away, I continued. The boys went into hiding and made sure that I was never to leave their mother's side. They threatened to hurt me if I did. The room stayed silent for a while till Mia spoke, which startled me and some others. Why did Chloe have it in for me? She asked. My eyes lingered on her. Everything that was done was all because of Chloe and her needs. Chloe wanted Aiden for herself, I said, keeping my eyes solely on Mia. Josephine realized Alpha Robert wasn't looking for another mate since he dismissed her advances, which was funny to see. Alpha Robert made sure she never got near him. Some of the others sat there with stony faces, which I could understand. Alpha Robert had lost his mate. My wolf whined, but I had to muddle through what had happened to us and tell them everything. Josephine was pissed until Chloe had her sights set on Aiden, but soon realized that you were in the way, I said. I didn't know that she would do all the stuff she did to you. Chloe made snide comments to Sarah about you, which made her jealous of all the attention you were getting from Darren and Lee, so she followed Chloe around like a lapdog. They were making plans every night on what they were going to do with you. My heart sank, knowing this was all going to be too much for her. I was always kicked out of the room, I murmured. The thing was, Aiden didn't want anything to do with Chloe. He had been in love with you all the way through. I am sorry for what she did to you. Chloe was relentless in her ways toward Mia. She didn't care how she got rid of her, even if it was hurting her. Then she would do it. Taking my eyes from Mia for a moment, I looked around until I saw a woman not too far away from where we sat who looked like Mia. That had to be her mother or some relative, but it was hard to not stare, especially with the scar on her face. How the hell did she get that? Are you Beta David's mate? I asked the woman. She said nothing but only nodded to the question. Knowing that Josephine was with him while all the torture was going to his daughter made me question if he ever loved his child. Josephine started making advances at him, but he wasn't interested in her, I said. He kept a photo of you by his bed and would look at it every time. There was a huff at the last statement. Was there something wrong with that? Don't read much into that, Mia's mum murmured. He drank himself stupid all the time, and there was not 1 ounce of love in that man's body when it came to me. I said nothing but watched her move her hand over the scar on her face. My wolf came close, but not close enough to be seen. A low growl rumbled through my head as she stepped back. Her mate did that. I stared at Mia's mum, wondering if my wolf was mistaken, but she wasn't. My heart broke for the woman. How could a mate do such a thing to his mate? They were supposed to love one another and protect them from danger, not cause bodily harm or anything. Why are you telling us that? Mia asked with a frown, which made me look back at her. My father didn't have any good in his body and liked to cause more harm to both of us. Half of my scars are from him, too. Would you care to explain that part to me also? I felt my stomach churn at her words. Not only did Chole hurt her, but so did her father. That was sick and twisted. But something clicked in my head. Something that they may not know about. My eyes averted Mia and looked at Alpha Sam and his Luna, who seemed to be tense ever since I walked in here. There was something in the way she was looking at me that was full of distaste and disgust. "What do you know about Josephine?" I asked, which made them all stare at me blankly. "Not a lot," he murmured. "Why do you ask?" Knowing I needed to tell them everything, it was the only way I could protect my safety. They needed to know everything about these horrible people. "Josephine had a friend, Morgan," I said, looking between each one. "She's a witch, a dark witch at that. She has been known to mess with the dark magic that could make anyone feel death. She was always with Josephine and came when she contacted her. She would do her bidding or anything she asked." Without thinking, I explain everything I have witnessed while being with them and some things I learned over the years. "I know this since I caught Josephine slipping something into my father's drink or Beta David." Everyone's eyes stayed on me, but I could sense the tension change as soon as I mentioned Morgan being a witch. "Do you think she had this witch do something to people in the pack?" Mia asked. I looked at her and nodded. I remember Morgan being at the pack. It was dark and no one was around. The spell they used was in a potion that only needed to be put into their drink once a day. It is a memory loss potion. They will forget all about their mates and be under their control. "I have never heard of such." Alpha Sam gritted out, not believing me, but I didn't care. "As I have mentioned before, Morgan is a dark witch and messes with dark magic," I murmured, looking at him. "There are spells for anything and everything, even stopping someone from being with their mate. Most of the ones she used were potions, but I know there has been somewhere killing someone involved. I was never around when she did some, but the brothers loved talking about it like it was some sick game." Remembering that was the worst, I felt vomit come up my throat at the mere thought of them bragging and the smiles on their faces when they mentioned the brutality of what the spell did. It was enough for everyone to become afraid. They were laughing at someone being tortured for their own happiness. Shaking my thoughts away, I looked back at Alpha Sam. "I think she used this on Beta David a lot, as he was always with her," I said. No one uttered a word until a girl, whom I had never met, spoke. "How did you escape?" she asked, which made my heart ache more, knowing I had to tell them the rest of my story, which was why I was here. "The night I met my mate," I whispered, looking at Mia. Her eyes shot up at my words. You met your mate?" she asked, which only made me nod at her. "When?" "A gala held at your pack," I said, knowing this was going to be what they needed to know. I needed their help and protection. I had no one else to turn to. That's why I bared my soul to them about what I knew. And this was just scratching the surface of what was left to come. MIA, the gala. Something in her voice caused me to ponder over what she was going to say, since the way she was acting was concerning. Her eyes darted to everyone until she came back to me with sadness forming. "The gala was held for all pack members," she said, which made my stomach churn. Now I remember, it was that night I wasn't invited. It was also the night Chloe started her mission to get me out of the way of Aiden. "The gala was held by Alpha Robert," she blurted, pulling me from my thoughts while she continued. "Alpha Robert had a meeting that day with another Alpha, and even offered them to come to the party, to which they agreed. It was going well till I bumped into the Alpha in question, Alpha Tristan. That was the night we learned we were mates." My eyes widened. She was mated to an Alpha. Why wasn't there any celebration? Madeline looked nervous for some strange reason, but she continued. "We danced and even made small talk," she said, her face going blank slightly. Lila moved closer to watch her. "She's thinking about her mate," she whispered. Sadness laced her words. I was definitely missing something here. "Madeline," my uncle called, which made her pull from whatever she was thinking. Her eyes glistened slightly as she looked at him and gave him a nod before looking back at me. "I had planned to meet with Alpha Tristan after the gala," she said. I was going to tell him more about my situation and ask to leave with him. But the meeting never took place. Josephine noticed the way Alpha Tristan was with me and started having some people follow my every move. It was impossible. I looked at her. Well, something did happen. I remember the next day after the gala, no one knew where Madeline had gone. Everyone was worried about her, but Josephine and Chloe told everyone she had left to be with family. Why would they say that to the pack, unless someone was in on it with them? My mind whirled around with names, but there were too many to consider who would help Josephine, but then something hit me. He wouldn't. My face hardened, and Lila was figuring out what I thought. My eyes stayed on Madeline while she moved up in her chair, her eyes on me the entire time while she continued. She must have realized that. I knew something. I had to come up with something and fast. I knew Josephine had some sleeping draught with her, and I knew where it was, she said. I slipped some of it in their drinks and waited for them to fall asleep. Once they were asleep, I managed to pack a few things and headed out the door, she said. But I was caught by someone, Alpha Robert. He didn't say a word, only to be careful of the stairs. I walked to Alpha Tristan's room where he was waiting for me and explained that I needed to get away. He must have realized how desperate I was since he didn't bother asking me anything. After half an hour, we were heading out the door in the middle of the night, she said. Alpha Tristan managed to get his beta to get the car and meet us outside. We all got in the car and headed away, but we did get asked why we were leaving. I hid away from the person when they were talking to the beta. He told them there was a pack business that we needed to get back to. The wolf mind linked with someone, Alpha Robert, I assumed, and was all set on letting us go. Madeline let out a breath, which seemed to help her calm slightly before she continued. When we were further away from the pack and I knew we were safe, I asked Alpha Tristan why it was so easy to leave, since I knew there had to be a valid reason to leave. You didn't think pack business was important, Gwen blurted, which made me look over at her and then back at Madeline, who gave her a knowing look. I knew it could be true, she said with a slight frown. But Alpha Tristan never said such words to me when he spoke to me at the gala. He told me his pack had more security than any pack he had ever seen from others. That doesn't mean nothing will happen, Gwen gritted. I could feel the annoyance in her voice. Looking behind me, I noticed my mother's blank stare and Gwen. She was mind-linking with her, hopefully to calm down. I looked back to Madeline and gave her a nod to carry on. Alpha Tristan told me he had a quiet word with Alpha Robert about who we were, she said. Her eyes lowered to her lap while she continued. He explained Alpha Robert knew my family was very protective of me and that there may not be a way to help me get out of the pack. Madeline looked at me, just as a lone tear escaped. Alpha Tristan told me Alpha Robert was willing to help us to leave, and even help with me getting out, which was why the guard let out when we left. I knew I had to tell him everything that was going on and explain everything about Josephine and her web of lies. Alpha Tristan listened and got angry, telling me wanted to destroy them. I calmed him down and told him, as long as I was with him, I would be safe. There was a slight pause while Madeline wiped her stray tears with the back of her hand. Her eyes went to mine. Something was there which I couldn't place. What did they say to the pack when they learned I was gone? She asked. They told everyone that you left to be with family, I murmured, which made her eyes widen. I had no family left due to them, she said with slight anger slipping past. Lila moved closer and sighed. I believe Chloe slipped up and told people about her having a mate, she whispered, which made me go back to a memory I didn't want to go back to. Chloe had began her taunting on me and even slapping me across the face. After a beating I had from my father, I was sore and in pain. I slipped away into the restrooms, but before I could leave, Chloe walked in with Sarah and some other girls. They were talking, but didn't seem to realize I was there. Knowing I didn't want to get caught, I literally stood on the toilet and crouched down while holding onto the wall for support. Chloe was going on about something, but someone asked her what really happened with her sister, which annoyed her so much. Chloe was one of these people who wanted all the attention on her. I remember her telling her about her finding her mate the night of the gala, But when she was questioned about why they lied to the pack, but Chloe made some story up about them. Madeline wanted time alone with her mate before they announced it. I could tell Chloe was lying, but at the time, I didn't even bother to think about it since I had my own issues to worry about at the time. I let out a sigh and explained everything to Madeline and everyone with what I remembered, only leaving out certain things as the bullying and the beating I received that day. When I was done, Madeline looked confused and slightly distraught. Alpha Tristan said Alpha Robert promised not to tell anyone where I was, she said. Why would he do such a thing? That had me stumped too, but then the thought from earlier slipped through my head, and even Lila agreed it could have only been him. I don't think Alpha Robert told them that you found your mate, I said suddenly. I believe someone was following you or working for Josephine and Chloe. Maybe they got to someone in the pack to follow. I know you all weren't that long within the pack, but you never know. Madeline and everyone stared at me. No one said a word until Madeline asked, "Who do you think told them?" Without any conviction and knowing I was 100% right, I told then. My dad, I said. MIA. The tension in the air was due to the name I mentioned. My father was a sore subject to most people, especially me and my mom. He hurt us more than anyone. Madeline stared at me, slightly shocked. Your father? She asked. Why would he do such a thing? As soon as the question slipped past her lips, I frowned. Ever since she and that family moved into the pack, my father started to act differently. His drinking was still the same, but the violence toward me got worse as time went on. Sorry, she murmured. I didn't mean to. I shook my head, not wanting her sympathy. There was no need for it. How would he know about me and Alpha Tristan? She asked, her eyes looking at me and then at others, but it was Gwen who spoke next. Well, Beta David was always a creep, she murmured, but maybe Alpha Robert confided in him since he is his beta. Then the man may have been lured to see Josephine and he spilled his soul on her. As you can tell, it doesn't take much for him to lose control. My eyes darted to Gwen with a glare, but she was looking at my mother, who was now looking into her lap. She was on about the scar on her face. I looked back at Madeline, who seemed taken aback by Gwen's outburst. Someone had to change the subject and fast. We all looked at each other briefly until my uncle cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. What happened to Alpha Tristan? Alpha Sam asked, looking at Madeline. Where is he now? Madeline's face went completely white at the questions. Something happened, but what? Madeline started telling us what had happened and how she got to our pack. Alpha Tristan kept me safe for a while, she said with a small smile like a memory had slipped into her mind. He hid me away from everyone, including his pack members. He didn't want anyone to slip up, so no one knew about me, but they knew he had a mate. We marked and mated each other the day we arrived at his pack. That must have been weird for pack members not knowing who their Luna was. My mind raced, which made Lila growl slightly at me, which made me look back at her. Shh, listen, she said, which made me look at her dumbfounded. I looked back and listened to Madeline again. I was in hiding for months. Alpha Tristan wanted to make sure no one was after me. I knew the boys would someday try to find me, but nothing came, she said. We moved on for the best part of the year. I became the Luna to the pack. We decided it was time for me to have my Luna ceremony, which only meant we would have a few other alphas. Alpha Tristan only sent invitations to some local packs close by. Small packs that knew nothing about anything and who would benefit from being within another pack's presence. The whole event went without a hitch and even made more memories. There was a shift in the air when she carried on, but after my Luna ceremony, rogues started to appear, she said. Nothing more than a few here, nothing we couldn't handle. It would happen with a 10 at a time showing up, trying to get in. Every time we tried to catch one, they would kill themselves. It was weird. Alpha Tristan believed it had to be the brothers or even Josephine at work, since we hadn't had any trouble with any packs. I knew my past would catch up to me. The rogues kept coming, thus more every time they showed up. There was no warning on some, but there was more to attend to when there were. Madeline looked at me when another tear escaped. That was my life for a few months, until a few days ago when there was an army of rogues, she murmured. They were being led by the brothers, but to my shock, Josephine was there too. Madeline's voice started to tremble, and heartbreak plastered over her face. She was broken. She never left Chloe's side, never. She muttered. They were always together. But Chloe was nowhere to be found. Lila started to get tense in my head. Something about all this started getting to her, but I focused on Madeline while she continued. The war began, she said, letting out a breath. Alpha Tristan sent a guard to take me away from the pack. I didn't want to leave, but he said he wanted me to be safe and away from here. He sent me out of the back entrance. The guard and I ran until we reached halfway, leading us to your pack. Madeline's tears came more, but they didn't stop her from talking. The guard told me to stay down and hide. There were 2 packs closer to us. We had to decide where to go next. The guard was meant to return and even told me to head in the opposite direction. I had no clue where I was and knew I couldn't return to Alpha Robert since that is where Josephine would be. The guard left, and I was all alone, she said. Madeline looked around at all of us before continuing. It seemed she was trying to compose herself for what would come next. I don't know if my pack has survived or not, she started to say, but I know my mate is dead. I felt him die an hour after the guard left me. I felt the sharp pain in my heart of my mate leaving me, and I knew I had to leave. I headed to where I knew this pack was. My father always mentioned that being wiser and more powerful than the others. I thought you could help me. When I got outside the border, I saw Mia, and that is it, she said. That is my story. Madeline broke down and cried. I heard movement from the side and spotted my mother walking over to her and placing her arm around her shoulder while drawing her in for a hug. You are safe here, she said, looking at me with a soft stare. I think we should leave it here for now. Let Madeline have some rest. This stress isn't good for the baby. My mother's eyes darted to my uncle, who seemed to be nodding in agreement. We will leave it here, he said. Take Madeline to the hall to get her some food, and we can set her up somewhere to rest. I will have an Omega has made a room for, he said, but an idea formed in my head that made me cut my uncle off with my words. Why don't Madeline stay with me in my room? I asked, which took everyone by surprise, but I knew I had to keep it on the low key, why I was thinking of doing this. I can keep an eye on her, and the baby. Mum is even close by to help, too. My uncle seemed stunned by my idea, but my mother seemed to buy into it. I glanced around until my eyes landed on Sasha, who was giving me an odd look. Lila knew what I was thinking and doing, but I needed my friend to be on board with the whole thing. I will need her help. Opening a mind link to Sasha, she was the first to speak. What the hell are you thinking? She asked, not allowing me to explain. You can't trust her. Not after everything with that family. I don't trust her, I said. Then why? She asked, but I let out a low growl which cut her off. I will explain everything later, I said calmly. Just do as I ask and I will tell you everything when we are alone. Sasha was quiet for a moment before she asked me something that was playing on my mind. Do you believe the story she just spun? It feels all too far-fetched to me. I don't know, I said, telling her the truth. Lila is having difficulty figuring that out, since it is hard with her pregnancy hormones everywhere. Lila couldn't read her. She was emotional, but having her close by, we could work out if she was lying, which is one of many reasons I wanted her near me. It wasn't for being friendly, but you never know. It could end in friendship if I knew she's telling me the truth. MIA. After closing the mind link and shaking the thoughts looming over me, I looked at Sasha meaningfully. Sasha, can you show Madeline where my room is, and can you stay with her until I come up? I said with a small smile. Sasha nodded, but didn't look too happy with the arrangement. I knew I had to tell her more when I saw her later. Sasha stood and motioned for Madeline to follow her to the door. I watched Madeline give her a small smile, but she looked relieved to be taking a break. Being pregnant and going through everything she had been through must have taken a toll on her. But the real question was, did I believe what she said? The room was silent until the door closed behind them when my mother spoke. Why would you want to share your room? She gave me a confused look, and so did the rest of the room. I sighed and glanced around at everyone before I spoke. Lila was close by but didn't say anything. Like me, she wanted to know if everyone believed everything she said. I don't trust her, I exclaimed. Everything she has said about her father being manipulated by the Beta family, or what happened with her mate, but I am having a hard time believing she didn't know everything about Josephine or Chloe. Why do you think that? Gwen asked while everyone else seemed to listen to what I was talking about. I continued, keeping my eyes on Gwen, mainly because I can tell when people are lying, and with her, it's weird, I said. Her hormones are all over the place due to the baby, which is understandable, but we don't know if she was followed here. Before I could continue, my uncle spoke. No one did. I had guards look from where she came while we were here. I gave him a nod. There is a reason why he is the alpha, after all. Letting out a sigh, I continued again. Her scent is overpowering, and I know that because the guard who was here mind-linked you to tell me, I said, turning back to Alpha Sam again, who nodded when his mind recalled what I was on about. I want to keep her close, I said, but quickly added, mainly because I know she lied about something. What's that? Alpha Sam and my mother said together. They let out a little laugh but recovered quickly. I smiled at that but changed my expression. She said she didn't know anything about the bullying with Chloe, I said while my anger swirled inside me. Lila wanted to come forward, but I stopped her. I know she did, even if it was only once. She was standing there while watching with Aiden. Also, I know she was lying about Sarah, since Sarah was never jealous of the boy's attention I had. You never know, my dear. She might have. My mother interrupted me, but I slightly annoyed her. I wish people would stop making me feel like I don't know anything, or that I am too weak to do anything. That stops now. No, I know something no one else knows, I said, staring at my mother. I know a few nights before they arrived, Sarah came out as lesbian to me. Mum's eyes widened at what I said, but I knew I had to continue. She was never into the boys, I said, but a memory returned as I told them. I found out before the last beating I had from them that she had found her mate, Amber. I saw them kissing, but Amber and Sarah wanted to keep it quiet until they were ready to come out. Sarah didn't tell anyone, only me. She trusted me with it, and I have kept her secret. And she still beat you up, my mother asked, which all I could do was nod. Yeah, I murmured. She told me no one would believe me if I came out about her sexuality. Her beatings were to keep me in check. My eyes left my mother's and I looked at my hands. I knew why she was doing it, but I would never do that to her. I had been friends with her since I was little. I thought maybe she would change if she saw I kept her secret, but that never came. Everyone said nothing until my uncle cleared his throat, which made me look up to look at him. He gave me a reassuring smile while he spoke. I think we all have had enough information for one evening. I believe we all should go and rest. Alpha Sam stopped and looked around before he spoke again, and his eyes landed on me. Oh, Mia, just to let you know, Alpha Robert is coming to see us tomorrow. My eyes widened. Alpha Robert was coming here. When? Why? So many questions were rolling around in my head that I blurted them out. How? Why? I asked, looking at everyone. Each looked blankly and concerned, but my mother moved toward me and grabbed my hand. She made me turn to look at her, her eyes searching mine while she spoke. I spoke to him, she said. My eyes rounded around while trying to wrap my head around her words. She didn't have to do that. Alpha Robert didn't even know she was alive. There was no reason for her to do it. I had to, honey, she said, cupping my chin while she spoke. I knew him very well back in the day. If I spoke to him, he might react better and want to come here to see me. He doesn't trust many pack members, so we devised a plan to say he was coming here for an alpha. He will be here late tomorrow evening. No one will know he is here, not even our pack members. We are keeping this a secret for now. What the hell? Were they all for real? Lila, I murmured. Are they telling me the truth? Lila had been quiet throughout the whole conversation with them, but her energy was giving off something that I never felt before, which was concerning. Worry. She was worried, but she wasn't saying anything. My wolf stayed mute while I tried to grasp what was going on with the information they gave me. Why bring someone who had no clue what was going on? Having Alpha Robert here was one thing, but for what? He didn't do anything for me, not protect me from what was happening, not from his son. I was alone. He was all about himself, and no one else. Keeping my eyes on my mother, I looked back at her in shock. Taking a few deep breaths, I composed myself, but something clicked inside me and came out with what I had thought. "What about Madeline?" I said, glancing around at everyone and landing back on my mother while I continued. "She can't be here when he comes. We don't know if she can be trusted." Looking at everyone, no one said anything for a second until Gwen spoke up. "What if I get my nephew Adrian to take her somewhere in the packed village? She's going to need some clothes," she said, looking around. "Maybe we can look into some things for the baby, too?" I said nothing, while it looked like everyone was on board with the plan. "Yeah, that would be perfect. We will make sure she leaves, but you need to make sure Adrian knows to inform us if they are on their way back. Or better yet, tell him that we will let him know when to come back," Alpha Sam said. Everyone agreed, even me, but it was more for the sake of getting out of this office sooner. Lila moved closer, which made me look back at her. Her eyes were full of concern. "We can't shift in front of him," she said, which made me look back at her confused, which only made her look at me more sternly. "We are white wolves, remember. No one should know we exist, especially an alpha who never bothers to look after a member of his pack when they are suffering." She was right. We needed to be extra careful. Looking back, I went straight to my mother, who was looking at me with concern. "We shouldn't shift either," I said to my mum, not bothering to address anyone else. "Alpha Robert doesn't know I have my wolf, and you never shifted in front of him either. I think we should be careful around Madeline, too, till we know where we stand with her." Mum nodded, but there was a slight smile on her lips. "You're right," she said, looking over at my uncle. It was just then I realized that they were both mind-linking. My mind was racing. I needed to leave this office. I had been in here for too long. Clearing my throat, I looked toward Gwen. "I think I will go to my room," I said, turning on my heel to leave, but stopped when my stomach made a loud growl. I needed food, and knowing Sasha, she would too. That was also to believe that Madeline would be hungry too. I stopped and looked over at her. "Oh, can you send plates of food up for Sasha, me and Madeline?" Gwen nodded. I looked at my uncle and mum, who were now looking at me, and I continued. "I think we also need to make sure no one knows Madeline is here, only a select few." "Why, honey?" Alpha Sam asked, looking a little confused. "If she is being honest, we don't want word getting out that she was here," I said, which made my uncle's face soften when he realized where I was getting at. "We don't want them coming sooner or later. We don't want a war on our hands. Also, I think it will be important to make sure that she has no access to anything," I said. "Make sure she has a guard with her at times. Maybe the one who was there when I found her by the border. Maybe he could go with Adrian and Madeline shopping tomorrow. Also tell him what you tell Adrian, too, so he can keep an eye out, too." There was silence in the office, but my eyes stayed on my uncle, who gave me a smirk. "I believe you have found yourself once again, my dear niece." I looked at him and smiled. "I'm trying to come back, but it is a slow process and trying to work everything out." It was all I could do. Work on myself and show who I am meant to be. MIA. Turning back to the door, I walked and headed to my room. Letting my thoughts linger for a moment until I got to my room, when an Omega was there with 3 bowls of soup on a tray. I gave her a smile and take the tray from her. She opened the door for me and I walked in, but looked up to see Madeline sitting on the couch and Sasha on the bed, not talking to one another. Looking away while the door closed behind me, I spoke. "I brought some soup for everyone," I said, looking over to them. They both nodded and headed to me. Both grab a bowl and pull out a chair by the table. We all took our seats and sat while we began to eat. The silence in the room was deafening, which was making Lila a little on edge. "This room is amazing," Madeline exclaimed, which pulled me from my thoughts, and looked at her with a small smile while I looked around. "Yeah, it is. I never had a room before," I said, realizing I exposed more of myself, and not to just Madeline, but to Sasha. Both look at me in shock. "What do you mean?" "You never had a bedroom?" Madeline asked, which made me look at her, but then looked at my friend, who seemed to be quieter than normal. "I lived in a cabin on the outskirts of the border with my father," I murmured. "He would make me sleep on the floor. The cabin only had a couch, which he either slept on, or it was full of vomit from him being so drunk." Madeline's face hardened. No one knew where you lived, not even Sarah, she said. Another lie. I know, my father made sure no one knew. My father was abusing me too, I said, taking note of what she was saying to me. Madeline stilled at the statement. I watched her for a moment until Lila looked at her and growled. She knew, she mumbled, stepping back into my head. You knew about it, didn't you? I said, which makes Sasha look at her and growl. Madeline looked at her with wide eyes and held her hands up in defense. I'm sorry, she said, looking at Sasha, and then back at me when she continued. I thought something was up. I knew Chloe was being ruthless because that was in her nature, but when I noticed the way you were with your father when I saw you around, you were afraid of him, she said, her eyes softening. I never told anyone what I thought I saw. I wanted to find help for you. I did, but I had to think about myself. You do realize, Sasha spatted, which made Madeline and me look at her. If you didn't think about herself, you could have thought about taking her with you, and then she wouldn't have the thick scar on her leg. My eyes widened at her sudden outburst, while Sasha snarled. She grabbed her bowl and spoon while moving back on her chair, which landed on the floor with a thud, which made me and Madeline jump, but we didn't say anything, while Sasha headed through the door and slammed it shut. The room was tense between us, but Madeline cleared her throat while my eyes stayed on the door that Sasha left. I would have helped you, Mia, she said. I just needed to. Lila was growling in my head, annoyed someone noticed it but put themselves first. Lila wanted out, but I managed to control her slightly. Deciding to speak about what Sasha said, I clearly thought it would help her understand what I went through. The scar on my leg is from my father, I explained, looking at her. Her eyes widened, but she sat there waiting for me to continue. My father brought a new weapon home from the cells. He told me he wanted to try out. He laced it with wolfsbane. A low growl rumbled through me, but I continued. I have scars from him. He hurt me ever since my mother left. He took it out on me. Chloe told everyone that it was my fault my mother left, but it was my father's. I looked at Madeline with anger. You noticed the scar along my mother's face, right? I said, which made her nod. That was from my father. He gave it to her the night she escaped. I know you had to help yourself, but also Madeline, I wish you could have helped me more, I murmured, looking away. The thought of eating now was making me feel sick. I needed her to know what I actually thought, so I let it all out. I can sense that you are lying about most stuff, you know? I said, her eyes widen again. So here's what I suggest. You either start telling the truth about everything, or I will tell Alpha Sam to put you in the cells. The atmosphere in the room tenses while Madeline starts to shake. Everyone knew what was going on, she whispered. Someone could have helped you. What about Adian? I growled loudly but let out a bitter laugh. He wouldn't have helped. He was all in with Chloe, I said with a bit of spit coming from my mouth. He deserves whatever happens to him and more. I don't give a if he is Chloe's mate. Madeline looked shocked at me. What do you mean Aiden's Chloe's mate? That can't be, she said and looked at me. Madeline stares at me for a moment but places her hand on mine. There is something I am missing. Lila is close by looking at her. She knows something, Lila grunted. I know she knows something. I can feel it too. Chloe can't be Aiden's mate, Mia, she said, and closed her eyes briefly until she opened them suddenly, her eyes glowing yellow. I was surprised. Her wolf had taken over. I am Leah, Maddie's wolf, she said, her head to the side. I was too afraid to move my hand from Madeline's grasp, while Leah continued. I know you don't trust us, but our pup and my human is all I protect. I knew that would be the case since that is how Lila is with me. Maddie has been part of that family against her will, she said with a growl. Lila was close, listening to everything that her wolf was saying to us. They never hurt her like your father hurt you, but they mentally tortured her. She only found out recently that the boys killed her father. They killed him, not put him in the mental hospital for the unfit wolves. Your wolf is special, and she knows she can trust me. You can feel it too. I can, Lila whispered, but I said nothing. I could feel the truth coming from her, but there has to be more to this. What were they hiding? But Maddie is right. Chloe is not Aiden's mate. Leah explained. She got a mate. He is a rogue and is the best friend of the brothers. Please let Madeline explain more. You can trust her. I promise, Leah said, and like that, Madeline's eyes closed and Madeline's eyes opened just as a tear slipped past. I found out about my father when I was in the next town over, she whispered, just as another tear escaped. There was news in the paper from a while back when I was kept out of sight. Tristan didn't know it was my father. I had to find that out when I was running and hiding. Madeline looked at me. Leah is right, you can trust us, she whispered. Chloe does have a mate. He is the same as the brothers. The mate bond between them is weird. He makes her do everything but the mate thing with them is weird as he screws every she-wolf, and she does the same. But they always come back to one another. It is like a game. I remember catching her with Darren one evening, then going to Aiden's room. This, she said with a shudder. I think they were sharing her. The feel of disgust fills my stomach, but she continued to look at me. Leah said, Your wolf and you are special. You will help in the fight. I looked taken back. What fight? Lila. My wolf is, I said, but I can feel Lila getting more confused than I am. I don't know what to believe, Lila mumbles, which made me look back at her. Her eyes were full of something, but it was hard to figure out what. I looked back at Madeline and wanted to know what she knew. Do you know why we are special? I asked. What fight? Madeline looked on blankly as she talks to her wolf, but when she comes back, she is stunned. My wolf knows something, but she won't tell me, but she says we have to stay with you and help you as much as we can, she said, and grabs my hand into hers. Mia, I am sorry for everything that has happened to you, and I want to help you all the way. You are willing to protect me, even after everything. Let me help you in whatever way I can. I stared at her, but she gave me a small smile. As for the fight you asked, she said, looking at our joined hands, I believe the Beta family will fight whoever stands in their way, and it may come down to 2 packs, Alpha Sams or Alpha Roberts. It will depend on what happens next. I said nothing and let out a sigh. This was too much to take in. As much as I want to believe her, my head is spinning after everything that has been said. I needed time to clear my racing thoughts. Clearing my thoughts, I gave her hand a squeeze and let go while looking at her. I think we should rest, I said. You can take the bed, I will take the sofa bed. Madeline looks at me and gave me a nod. She moved from the table and heads over to the bed, but stopped. Mia, I will gain your trust, she said, which makes me look at her with a small smile. I will help in any way I can, I mean it. I smiled, not knowing whether to believe her or not. You best get some sleep. Sasha's brother Adrian and his friend are going to take you into the village tomorrow to get some stuff, I said, which makes Madeline pull a face. I don't have any money, she mumbled, looking lost. Alpha Sam puts money aside for new members when they arrive, I said, remembering my uncle telling me why he does it when I spent some time with him. He knows whenever someone new comes into the pack, they might not have much coming into the pack with, I said. You will get some to help you get by for now. Madeline smiled. Alpha Sam is a better alpha than my father, she said, then shudder rippled through her. More like the Beta. They made sure they were rich and never helped the people of the pack. They took everything. Madeline climbs into bed and looked at me while she settled herself down. Alpha Tristan was the same as Alpha Sam. He always put his pack first and always helped them when he could. He sounds like a good man too, I said, while I watched a yawn escape her lips. Now sleep, you need to rest for the little one. Madeline smiles and placed her hand on her stomach. Alpha Tristan didn't know we were pregnant. How could you tell? Her eyes meeting mine. Your scent, I said softly. It changed from the last time I saw you. Also, my wolf can hear a faint heartbeat too. Now sleep. Good night, I murmured, watching her till her eyes closed. Good night, Mia, she says and turns over. It was long before she fell asleep straight away. She must have been exhausted. When I knew she was asleep, I looked back at the bowls of soup and began mine, even though it was cold. I didn't care. I knew I had to eat, or someone would be worried about me. Looking over to Madeline's bowl, she had ate it all. Once I was done, I placed the bowls in the middle of the table and moved from where I was sitting. I walked over to the couch and started to get it ready for bed. Lila was settling in my head to try and sleep, but I could feel her emotions. It had been an evening full of everything and too much information to let it all settle. I needed time to think about. Pulling the couch into the sofa bed and pull out more blankets that the Omega must have left for me. I got on it and made sure I was comfy. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I let my mind clear and fell into a deep sleep too, letting the darkness take over me. Even knowing there may be more information tomorrow when I see Alpha Robert. Aiden. After my father showed the representative to the door and Chloe left with her mum to go to the mall, I wandered around the pack house before heading back to the office. Everyone was either training or having food. It was peaceful for once, but my mind wouldn't stop racing over every little detail. Jake was settled, but even he felt uneasy. Looking back at him a few times, he rested his head on his paws. His eyes were open, but they never looked back at me. He seemed to be far away. I walked aimlessly into my father's office. The door was closed. I knew I had to knock, but it would only be him there since most of the pack members would soon be retiring to their rooms. Opening the door, I pushed it open and looked around until my eyes landed on his desk, where I saw him placing the phone down and looking deep in thought. I didn't even realize he was on the phone. There was a sudden movement in my head, which made me realize Jake had moved to see what was going on. I heard a huff slip out, but I didn't pay attention. Keeping my eyes on my father, it didn't take long for my father's eyes to meet mine and hardened. The look he gave me was one that I was slowly and eventually would get used to by the look on it. I knew I wasn't being the alpha or son he needed me to be, and that would have to change. There was a plan in process with my friends about keeping the whole Chloe thing in check, and there was no point in worrying about my father and what he thought. "Dad, what do you need me to do?" I asked, shaking my crazy thoughts away. I needed to stop overthinking everything, and being busy was what I needed. My father stared at me momentarily before leaning back in his chair. "I suppose we could do some paperwork," he said, looking at a pile of papers to the side of the desk. "There are a few things I need to review with you, and you can do them yourself." I nodded and walked toward the desk. Taking a seat in front of the desk, I leaned forward when my father handed me a pile. I listened to what he had to tell me on what to do. Most of it was reading what people wanted or requested. Most were normal things for household or even training purposes, too. I agreed with most of them, but some were even too far-fetched for us to get. After doing those, we went through some of the accounting and even filed some of the documents away. It was a lot of information to take in, but I managed. After what felt like hours, I moved my neck side by side till I felt a click. Groaning, I looked at my father, who seemed to be back far away again. He had been doing that quite a lot lately. Jake yawned while he came closer to see. "Something is up," he mumbled, which made me look at my father. Not saying anything to Jake, I sighed and leaned back in my chair. "Is that it?" I asked, making my father shake his head and look at me. "Yeah," he said, looking at me. "I will need you to do more paperwork in the morning and then train. I have somewhere I have to be tomorrow, and I can't let anyone know where." I frowned. Where the hell would he be going? "Where are?" I asked, but a low growl cut me off, sending a shiver right through me. My father wasn't someone who would growl, only when he was pissed. Looking at him now was the look that I would use to get when I was in trouble. Was I in trouble? "Dad, have I done something?" I asked, but he cut me off with another growl. Another shiver rippled through me again. Jake was up on all fours and growled. Something was up with my father and Wolf, but it was hard to figure out what. "Don't ask questions, Aiden," my father murmured. "I don't have to tell you anything." Something was eating at him. I hated that we didn't have the relationship we once had when I was a child. We would do everything together. Talking and laughing was the main thing since he always wanted to hear me laugh. It was his go-to when I was feeling sad. But it all stopped when my mother passed away. Everything changed at the flip of a switch. My father became someone I didn't know anymore. He was so withdrawn and even left me to defend myself. Even though I had my friends and some adults around, nothing compares to being alone. Shaking my thoughts away, I knew trying to ask anything else was useless. Moving from my seat while I kept my eyes on him, I murmured good night and walked away. I felt his eyes on me until I left the office room. Closing the door behind me, I let out a breath which I didn't even notice I was holding, and decided to go to my room. It was getting late, and I knew I had to be up early. Heading to my room, a mind link came through from Lee. "Aid," he said. "Chloe and her mum disappeared." "Fuck. What do you mean you lost them?" I asked, walking into my bedroom. I felt Jake up in my head, listening to what Lee had to tell us. "We kept a distance and even followed them to the mall," he murmured. "It was a normal, boring shopping trip until there was a commotion near where they were standing. By the time we got close to them, they were gone." "Sounds like they knew they were being followed," Jake grumbled, making me wonder. Knowing there was no point in Lee hanging around, he returned to the pack house. "Let's come back," I muttered. "They will show up soon. We need to come up with more of a solid plan to keep an eye on them." "We will hold a meeting tomorrow," he said. "Your dad's office?" "Sure," I said. "Tell the others, even get Sarah involved." "No problems," he said, closing the mind link. My eyes darted around my room, and I sighed. I quickly decided to jump into the shower to freshen up. After the world's fastest shower, I climbed into bed but was not asleep. My eyes stared at the ceiling. The whole pack house was silent, which was normal for the time. Turning onto my side, I looked out the window, and a light appeared. What the hell? After getting out of bed, I walked over to the window to see what was going on. My father was climbing into his car. Where the hell was he going? A mind link opened from him. "Aiden, I'm leaving for the 2 nights and a day," he muttered. "You have full control of the pack. There is more paperwork and even training to do. I want you to take all the training sessions, too." Before I could say anything, he closed the mind link. What the hell was that all about? Where the hell was he going? My father has never left me alone, not even for an hour. This had to be something serious. MIA. Warmth rested on my face, which made me open my eyes. I blinked a few times before I opened them. The sun came through the curtains, while I stretched out my arms and looked back at Lila, who was waking up. Without saying a word to her, I looked back and down at the sofa bed I was on. I was sitting up on the sofa, which meant I must have been that tired not to get the thing changed into a bed. It was even surprising how comfy the thing was. I didn't feel any aches or pain. Taking my eyes off the sofa, I looked around the room until I landed Madeline. She was sitting up in bed, staring at me. Her eyes widened when she looked back, just like she was shocked to see me sitting here. "I am sorry. Did I wake you?" she asked, recovering slightly from being startled by me. I shook my head and smiled. "No," I said, moving to the edge of the sofa. "I was coming around." My eyes darted to the window while I continued. "It looks like a lovely day. Maybe we could take a walk later." My eyes darted to Madeline, who seemed to be deep in thought, but nodded. This must be strange for her. Lila moved in my head, which made me look back at her. "She's confused," she murmured. "She doesn't believe we are going to keep our word to her about being safe here." I said nothing, but I knew how that felt. I felt like that in my old pack. Lila let out a sigh, which made me look back at her. "We will be seeing Alpha Robert sometime soon today," she muttered, which only made my stomach twist at her words. I didn't know how to feel about him coming here. He never made me feel safe. Would he believe everything I will have to say about what happened to me while in his pack? Madeline cleared her throat, which brought me back from my racing thoughts. I looked back at her. She smiled. "I know this is all too weird for us," she said, her cheeks slightly blushing at her own words. "We will have to trust each other, even if it is hard." I said nothing, not knowing what to say to her. She did have a point, though. We did have to learn to trust each other. We were both wronged by the same people. Maybe we can find a common ground with that, especially since we can take them down together. But only time can factor that, and that part is limited since we had no clue what to expect next. My eyes stayed on her for a moment until I spoke. "I think I will have a shower," I said, changing the subject. "You can have one after me, and then we can have some breakfast. Hopefully we will have some idea of what will be happening today." Madeline nodded. "Sounds like a plan," she said, leaning back in the bed and resting her head on the headboard. "I will need some fresh clothes." I gave her a small smile. "There are some clothes in the closet," I murmured, moving from the sofa and standing up. "There are plenty of different sizes. You may find something in there." When I got here, my mother had no clue what size clothes to get me, so she ordered a few sizes of most. There may be some in there that Madeline could use for now. I wasn't going to wear them, so they were going to be put to good use. Madeline smiled, but I didn't give her a chance to speak as I walked toward the bathroom to have a quick shower. Stepping inside, I closed the door and leaned on it for support. I felt her eyes on me the entire time. Lila hummed in my head while I pushed off the door and started to get undressed. I needed to freshen up. I needed to be ready for when Alpha Robert came. Once I was finished, I got out and wrapped a towel around myself. I forgot to bring anything in here with me, so I decided to make my way back into my room where I found Madeline still sitting on my bed, but on the edge. She must have moved from the bed at some point, since there were some clothes in a pile beside her. Madeline looked at me and smiled. Clearing my throat, I walked over to the closet and spoke to her. "You can have a shower, and then we can go down for food," I said, looking over at her while I opened the closet door. Madeline nodded and moved from the bed. She quickly grabs the clothes and walks over to the bathroom. I watch her every move until she closes the bathroom door behind her. Keeping my eyes on the door but listening in till I hear the shower run, I open a mind link to Sasha. "Hey," I said, "when will your brother be ready to take Madeline?" Sasha sighed. "Morning. My brother will be ready soon," she said. "He said he would meet you both for breakfast and then they could leave. How was last night with Madeline?" "She was okay," I said and started to explain what happened when she left. Once I finished telling her, I explained what I thought. "I think we can trust her," I said with a sigh. "But that was only because I nearly killed her last night for lying." Sasha let out a gasp. "What happened?" "I could tell she was lying about some things," I said. "But her wolf came to the surface to talk to me. Her wolf wanted us to believe them and that they are here to help us." "Do you believe them?" she asked. I didn't know that part. Lila may have believed her, but I was still on the fence for now. "Well, until I can trust her. As Madeline stated not too long ago, we needed to trust each other. Maybe I can find out when she has spent time with me." "I don't know what to believe," I muttered. "I need time to—" Before I could finish the sentence, Sasha cut me off. "Alpha Sam is trying to get through to us," Sasha said and opened the mind link for him to join in. I knew I had to be careful with what I had to say or feel next, or he may call me out on it. Alpha Sam came through and said good morning to us, but got straight to the point. "As much as I know we all need to rest more," he said, which I believed was aimed at me more than Sasha. "Breakfast will be on the go. Alpha Robert is already here and will be waiting for you to come to us. I have him in a room alone with my beta. He will join us when we are all there." The mere mention of the man sent my stomach into knots. I thought I had time before I saw him, but I knew I had to confront him and tell him everything that had happened. "Mia," Alpha Sam said, making me pull back from what was racing in my head. "With what I have heard from the Omega, Alpha Robert seems not in the right headspace and seems to have the whole weight on his shoulders." I didn't know what to say to that. "What about Madeline?" I asked. I told her we would go to breakfast. "I will send Adrian to take her shopping and even suggest taking her for food too," he said. "Both of you will be in the office soon." With that, Alpha Sam left the mind link, leaving me and Sasha alone. "Well," she said, "we may have to deal with the next problem sooner. At least we can learn more about the truth about what is going on, and even give that old man something to think about." That part was true. Alpha Robert was going to get what was coming and some harsh truths. I am going to turn his life upside down by the time I'm finished with him. He was going to learn what a true alpha his son would become and would end up like. There are some things I have held back and not even told my family about, since I never thought I would get the chance to tell, and now that time has come. I was unleashing everything onto the one person who was supposed to be there for me. I just hope Alpha Robert had the stomach to hear it all, because I wasn't going to be kind with my words. Lila hummed at my thoughts and pride swept through. I knew I had to stick up for myself, and what better way than to do it with the man who abandoned all his pack members? Mia. Shaking my thoughts away, I let out a sigh while Sasha continued. "I will ask Adrian to take Madeline as soon as she is dressed. They can get food in the village. Lila and I agreed. Knowing that Alpha Robert was here was one thing, but we needed to keep it between people we could trust, and Madeline wasn't someone on the list. Fine, I said. I will make sure she is ready. You mind link Adrian to tell him what is going on. Okay. Sasha closed the mind link, and I looked around the room. I listened in and could hear the shower running, which meant Madeline was still in there. I knew I had to get ready for the day. I walked over to the closet and grabbed some clothes. I put on shorts and a t-shirt, pairing it with some flip-flops. I walked over to my vanity and sat down. I quickly brushed my hair, which took longer since it's really long. I haven't had my hair cut in 7 years. I put my hair in a high ponytail. A mind link from Sasha. Adrian is all for breakfast outside the pack house, she said, which made me feel grateful. I was planning on being nice to Madeline, but with Alpha Robert being here, I can only be nice to one person, and I would rather be her than him. He wants to give her the village special in the foods department. Tim, the guard is ready too. They will meet us at the bottom of the stairs. Perfect. I will head to the office, I said. Sasha and I didn't talk for long, and agreed to meet by the stairs. She wanted to introduce Adrian to Madeline before we got to the office. After that, she closed the mind link. Lila let out a sigh. It will be time to deal with what happened, she said. How are you feeling about seeing the Alpha? My stomach churned at her words. I know it needs to happen, I muttered, but there are so many questions, and I just hope we find out the answers. We need them. There are some home truths for him to hear, she said with a stern tone. That part is true. He was going to know what he had missed, things that were right under his nose, and it was going to be the ugly truth for him. I was about to speak when I heard the water shut off. Looking through the mirror, I watched and waited for Madeline to come back into the bedroom. After a few moments, Madeline opened the door and made her way out of the bathroom fully dressed and her hair in a ponytail. She placed her dirty clothes in the laundry hamper and looked at me with a smile. There is a change of plan for breakfast. I have to be with my uncle today, some family stuff, I said. Sasha's brother, Adrian, is going to treat you to breakfast in the village. He wants to show you what our pack village is like and what good foods there are, even some shopping too. Madeline looked a little taken back by what I said, but her smile grew. That would be amazing, she said. When do we leave? I'm starving. I smiled. Now, if you are ready, we are meeting them at the bottom of the stairs. Madeline nodded. I moved from the vanity and walked to her. Madeline walked to the door and opened it, but waited for me to leave first. We headed out of my room and walked along the corridors till we went down the stairs. Tim and Adrian were waiting for Madeline with Sasha. Both men looked handsome. As we got to the bottom of the stairs, I introduced Madeline to them. They greeted each other and headed toward the front door. I watched them till the pack house door closed behind them. While I introduced Tim and Adrian to Madeline, Sasha stood by the side. I knew she wouldn't introduce them to her. I could tell by the look on her face. Someone was mind-linking her. Let's go to the office, Sasha said with a smile. I brought you something to eat. You must be hungry. I looked at her hands, toast and an apple. She had a bottle of water under her arm. Eat, she said, thrusting the toast into my hand. The thought of food had gone the minute my uncle told me Alpha Robert was here. You can eat here, Sasha murmured. There is no need to rush. Alpha Sam wants to make sure you have something to eat. We don't know how long. I gave her a look, which made her stop talking. Sorry. I said nothing and walked over to the chairs that were near the front door. I began to eat the food and while Sasha hoovered by. She said nothing, just a close eye on me. After we ate, I drank some water and let out a sigh while I stood up. Shall we go to the office? I asked, looking in the direction we had to go in and looked back at Sasha, who nodded. We walked away and headed to the second floor where the office was located. In my old pack, the office was located on the first floor, which made sense. I had to ask my uncle why he had his office on the second floor, and he commented on the view he had. It was over the looking parts of the training grounds. He always wanted to make sure the pack members were trying, since the pack is one of the biggest in the world. We approached the door and knocked on the door. There was a movement, but no one said anything until the door opened, and there stood my mother smiling. "Come on in, girls," she said softly. Her eyes were on me, and they held me there. She looked slightly concerned. "Mum is nervous," Lila mumbled, which made sense. This wasn't just about me anymore. This included her, too. This was our story about what we suffered and what happened to us. I gave my mum a reassuring smile. Mum moved to the side and let us in. We headed inside. I looked around the room, not looking for the man in question. The room was in darkness with a few lamps darting around the place. All the curtains were drawn. They clearly were going above and beyond to make sure no one saw him. Alpha Robert. Looking over at the desk, I noticed Alpha Sam with Luna Sadie sitting together. I let my eyes move to each person. Gwen is sitting in the middle of the couch. Sasha moved past me and went to sit on one side and my mother on the other. Movement from the side made me look over to it, and there stood Alpha Robert. He looked rough. He looked like he had aged in the last 3 weeks since I last saw him. His eyes bore back at mine when realization set. The corners of his lips curled up into a small smile. "Mia," he whispered. "MIA." His voice sounded gruff while he spoke. "It is so nice to see you. We all thought you were dead from the fire." I stared at him, not knowing whether to speak. His words echoed in my head, but I realized my conversation with everyone when I arrived. Gwen had started a fire to help me escape. Shaking my thoughts away, I kept my eyes on him while he continued. "You look healthier since you came to the pack." I said nothing. Alpha Robert was standing by the desk, but I noticed 2 chairs next to one another. They faced everyone. Letting out a breath, I walked over to the chair while he sat. His eyes watched me the entire time until I grabbed the chair, moved it away from it slightly, and sat down. The tension in the room was thick. No one said anything until Alpha Robert spoke. "I have to say," he said, his eyes briefly wandering over to the couch and then back at me. "It was weird to hear your mother's voice on the phone. Seeing her now is all so real." "I am happy to know she is alive," he said, looking back at her with a smile. My eyes darted to my mother, who gave him a nod. Her face was blank. Lila moved close and stared through my eyes but said nothing. I could feel her curiosity about what had happened. I looked over to my uncle, whose eyes were on me, but he moved them to Alpha Robert. "Shall we get down to business?" I looked at Alpha Robert, who gave him a slight nod. "Yes, please. I want to know what you know." Why would he want to know what we want to know? Shouldn't he start by filling in on what has happened? Lila huffed, not liking the first question. I looked over to my uncle, whose expression changed from friendly to like he wanted to rip Alpha Robert's throat out. My uncle gave Alpha Robert a stern look and spoke. "Please start, as we can fill in more for you." Alpha Robert stared at my uncle and said nothing momentarily before he let out a breath and began to tell us. "Okay," he muttered, and looked at my uncle. "We have a rogue problem. Really, rogues are his problem. How delusional can one man be? There were bigger issues within his pack, not just rogues. The problem I have noticed is that they don't seem to terrorize the pack or even threaten anyone. They just sit on the borders and look in. Guards notified me about the whole thing. I know I can't attack them without cause. One guard even thought they looked like they were snooping the pack out or waiting for someone. My anger erupted and I snapped, knowing precisely what was happening. They are waiting for someone. I gritted and stared at him. His face goes into shock at my voice, but he recovers quickly. "What do you mean?" I sighed. "You have a few people who are not what they say they are." His eyebrows furrow in the middle while he lets my words in. Does he believe me? "I don't think he even knows what to believe," Lila muttered, which added more anger to the fuel inside me. I looked at him. "Can you tell me?" Alpha Roberts began to ask, but my mother stopped him. "Robert," she said sternly, "we believe a few people within your pack are in with the rogues. We cannot confirm this with you for definite till we know more. There is more you are hiding from us." My eyes wandered to my mum, who was now staring at Alpha Robert with so much emotion it was hard to pick which one she was using to navigate this conversation. She continued, "This came to light when Mia and Gwen came back from the pack," she said and looked at me. "I believe you need to say a few things to my daughter first, don't you?" "Mama wants answers like us," Lila said with pride. Mum was standing up for us, making her stand to show that this pack wasn't messing around regarding abuse or bullies. I smiled at my mum but looked back at Alpha Robert. His face had become tight, as if he were trying to hold back. Alpha Robert must have sensed me looking back at him and looked at me. His eyes softened quickly. "Mia, your mother is right," he murmured. "I want to apologize for my ignorance of the abuse towards you by your father. I never knew he was doing anything to you. I swear, I only found out because your father was a mess when he came to the cabin. Someone set it on fire, and now he thinks you are dead." I looked at him, trying to let his words sink in about what he said about my father. Did my ears mistake what he said? He was upset to know I was dead. That can't be true. The man tortured me for most of my life. He made me suffer at his hands, leaving scars in his wake. Anger fueled every part of me, which was setting Lila off. "Calm down, sweetheart," Mum's voice echoed in a mind link. "Breathe." I did as she said, but I had to close my eyes. Lila looked back at me and gave me a reassuring nod. "You got this," she whispered. "I'm here." Hearing her words, I slowed my breathing down slightly. Once I knew I was calm enough to handle whatever else was said, I opened my eyes. My eyes landed on my mum, and I gave her a nod. I looked back at Alpha Robert, who looked concerned. "Are you okay?" he asked. I said nothing, but knew I couldn't bring Lila into this since no one in his pack knew I had a wolf. I had to hold off on saying her name to him, only for now. His words echoed in my head when I realized something. He never mentioned the bullying I went through from the pack members, Chloe, Adian, and his friends. "What about the bullying?" I asked. Alpha Robert stilled, but his face went into complete confusion. Lila moved closer and stared at him. I don't think he knew about the bullying. I said nothing and continued to watch him. The confusion on his face is funny. "What bullying?" he asked, looking at everyone. I didn't know there was any bullying. Anger swirled inside me. "Oh, there was," I said. "Like you said, I suffered at the hands of my father, but there were others. Others within your pack that caused me harm and made my life hell." Lila growled, feeling proud of the way I was handling it, but also pissed at the way our old Alpha was acting. Was he that blind? "I never knew others were bullying you, Mia," he said, sounding off. He was blind. It was showing right here in front of everyone. Anger fueled the air of the office. It was intense, but it wasn't mine that was at play. It was everyone else in the room. They didn't like what they were hearing. Mum and my uncle looked like they were about to lose their I didn't acknowledge anyone, only Alpha Robert. The Alpha would discover what kind of monsters he has in his pack, and what his son is like. I'm not the same girl from the pack. I won't let this all go. He needed to know the truth, and now I will tell him everything, what everyone put me through. MIA. Alpha Robert looked at me as I told him what exactly happened when he wasn't around, and I wouldn't sugarcoat it for him. "I was abused by my father, Alpha Robert," I said, his face hardening. "He was brutal. He tortured me all the time. I am quite surprised you never smelt my blood on him since it was more frequent." Alpha Robert tensed. "Do you know what his favorite thing is to do?" He shook his head as I explained to him. His favorite thing was to bring home a device from the cells and use it on me. I pulled my shorts up my leg on the left side and showed my scar for him to see. I kept my eyes on him while I spoke. This was his last parting gift. He laced it with wolfsbane and repeatedly stabbed me, not in any other place. 3 times in the same place. The tension in the office was tense, but no one uttered a word. The look of sympathy came, which I did not want from him. His eyes were on my scar, but I was not done. I told him more than anyone in this room knew, but this man left me with a monster. He has scarred me all over my body. Alpha Robert didn't move or even react. My anger rose. My father didn't just torture me, Alpha, I gritted. He started to spread rumors. Rumors he wouldn't, I growled, which made me cut him off. Lila was ready to come out and shake him. Damn fool. He needs... Ignoring her words, I stepped toward him. "Rumors," I said. "Rumors that caused people to look at me differently. Rumors that made everyone believe. Do you know what they were?" Alpha Robert's eyes stayed on me, his eyes holding so much, but I didn't care. He needed to hear it all, which had to be from my voice. "There were too many," I said. "I was always disobedient to him, a horrible child, a nightmare. But the one that hit me more, and the one that caused more issues, was the fact I was the one who made my mum leave me since I had no wolf. Alpha Robert tensed, but I stepped closer. The last one, I was the reason she was dead. Everyone hated me in the pack, I gritted. You were never around to notice anything. When he started this, I started to get bullied by pack members. Alpha Robert looked down, but I wanted his eyes on me. Look at me, Alpha. He didn't. He moved and turned away from me. Coward. I was bullied in school and the pack house when I was there, I said, willing for him to look at me, but I continued. My father spread the rumors. I was supposed to be the one who chased his mate away. You know what? Everyone believed it and started to spread it around. And guess what? Because he was the beta, everyone believed him. Everything changed in one night, and they all turned their backs on me. They all distanced themselves from me. No one knew what that man did to me. The rumor spread through the adults and the children. They all changed and looked at me differently. Pack members who were once friends of my mother's distanced themselves from me. People who I thought were friends. Loud growls erupted through the room, but I ignored them. Lila was on the verge of showing herself, but she kept calm but growled. Keeping my eyes on Alpha Robert, I let my anger take over. Do you know who my bullies were, Alpha? Alpha Robert's eyes moved from the ground and looked at me. There was something there, but I didn't let him speak. Your son, that's who, I shouted. His eyes widened. Aiden was one. Oh, and let's not forget my own family member, Darren, turned against me and the two people I used to call friends, Lee and Sarah. A snarl escapes my lips. I glared at his shocked expression at the mention of his son's name. Aiden won't do that to you, Mia. He loved you. An evil laugh slipped through. Aiden loved me, I spat. That's a joke. He caused my shift. But this part was the one thing no one in the office knew about. I had kept it to myself. Only Lila knew. Ignoring everyone in the office and keeping my eyes on Alpha Robert. Do you know how he did that? Huh, Alpha, do you? He shakes his head but doesn't say a word. I know Lila is close by, but not enough for him to see her. I glared at him, knowing it was not him who should get my backup. He beat because of a pack member, I snarled loudly. Everyone let a growl out, but I ignored everyone. Your son beat me to an inch of my lip while Darren, Lee, and Sarah held me there. He kicked and punched me till I was knocked out. You must have deserved it if Aiden did that to you, Alpha Robert muttered. I glared at him and let out a growl. Lila wanted to come closer, but I pushed her back. This is my fight. Lila, this is my fight. Let me do it. Lila stood down but was there. I could sense her power. She was happy that I was taking a stand for myself. Getting back to the old fool in front of me, I stared at him. He doesn't even know who he nearly left me dead for. Do you know who he was protecting? I gritted. His face said it all, but he didn't budge. I was supposed to have attacked Chloe, I said. I was supposed to have punched her. It was the other way around, but ever since the rumors started, no one helped me. She was the one who punched me. I did manage to push her back, only for her to fall into the locker behind her and bang her head. That was when he came in. Alpha Robert was going through all kinds of emotions, but I didn't care. This man had no clue what was happening under his nose and behind his back. How dare you, my mother roared, making me look over my shoulder at her. She stood up and moved toward me, placing my hand up to stop her. Her face was full of rage. She wanted his head, but I didn't need her to do that for me. I shook my head and placed my hand in hers, making her stop. But my mother's rage consumed her, like mine does. My daughter didn't deserve anything she had, she gritted. Her eyes started to turn dark. I could feel her wolf coming forward. She was furious, and so was Lila. No one deserves to be treated the way Mia has. You call yourself an alpha. You don't deserve to be one. Call yourself my friend. You are not. Clearly, I misjudged who my true friends were. I squeezed her hand I was holding. Mum. My voice was barely a whisper. Her eyes moved from him to me. Her eyes were nearly black, but they soon disappeared. Her eyes came back to mine and softened. Turning around, I knew I had to say more to the man before me. He still needed to know more, and I knew everyone in the office would not like what I said. Alpha Robert stared at my mum, but his eyes went to mine. Listen here, Alpha, I said, moving closer to him. I didn't deserve not the abuse from my father, and definitely not the bullying from my so-called friends and that son of yours. What comes next will be hard, even for me. MIA. I moved closer and stood over him. He might be an alpha, but this man will know that a white wolf is no one to mess with. I lean over him and can sense my uncle and other members standing up and looking on. Chloe started it all. Who made me the pack's punching bag? I took another step back and lifted my t-shirt to reveal the scars on my body. Some have faded away since Lila has gained stronger since we stayed with her. She healed me once she had recovered herself. Some are going to be there, but there is one scar on my body that is there. My father didn't do it. No one knows this story. I never thought I would have to tell it, but since he was here and was defending the man who did it, it is only fitting to tell him exactly what his son is like. It was after the rumors came out that it all started, and this was when I soon realized Aiden was no longer the one I knew. Alpha Robert's eyes were on me, but lowered to my exposed stomach. They widened while he paled. "See this scar here," I said, pointing to the deep scar on my stomach, which was 5 centimeters deep. "This is what your son did to me, Alpha," I said. He looked at the scar with wide eyes. Some growling was behind me, but I ignored them and focused on Alpha Robert. He did this because I wouldn't let his precious Chloe have my seat, which was pathetic. He stabbed me with some scissors anyway. It never healed because I had no wolf. I stepped back and lowered my t-shirt. Moving back toward my seat, I sat down, not daring to look away from him. He was trying to put it all together, or even control his emotions. "That was one of many scars that happened at the hands of Chloe," I muttered. "I know you want to know how he made me cause my shift," I said. "So here it is." "It all began when Chloe hurt herself in front of me on that day," I said, moving my head to the side, watching Alpha Robert. "She beat me up so badly that day, I couldn't even move. After she was done, she took it a step further. She hurt herself. I watched in horror. She made herself bleed. I only became aware when I woke up and saw her blood all over me." The office buzzed with silence and anger reverberated within its walls. Everyone has been learning more since I came here. I had only learned to trust people and even learned to become stronger. Lila willingly told me to continue. She needed Alpha Robert to hear what happened. She wanted him to know everything. She was close by, but still not for him to see or even sense her. Aiden came into the room when Chloe cried and threw herself at him. I didn't realize what was happening until I glanced down and saw that I was covered in blood. Her blood. She put on a show for him. Aiden believed her, I said, sighing as if bored, but continued. He grabbed me and forced me out of the school by my hair. He dragged me into the forest, calling his friends to follow. When we were out of sight, he threw me like a ragged doll till I landed on the ground. He punched and kicked me while Darren and Lee stood by. Chloe had a lovely grin on her face. Alpha Robert gave me a sympathetic look, but I didn't want it. "I don't want your sympathy, Alpha Robert. I want you to understand the extent of the torment I experienced in your pack, not just from my father, but also from other pack members." "I bet you had food every damn day, didn't you?" "Well, I didn't. I was lucky if I had 1 meal a week," I snapped. "I want nothing from you. You let me down. You let the pack down by locking yourself away from us. I know it was hard for you to lose your mate, but we all lost someone and had to move on. You let your grief take over. I may be the only one who suffered, but I thought you would have at least had my back if you knew." The Alpha stared at me, wearing nothing but a blank expression. "His wolf is talking to him," Lila said, coming closer to look. "He's not impressed by what you have said." My eyes lingered on him for a moment, but I looked toward my uncle, who was staring at me. A mind link opened between us. "Well done," he murmured. "You are one brave lady." I said nothing. There was no pride or anything. I felt mentally drained. I was about to feel the consequences of every little thing I had experienced, which was available for everyone to hear. There was a part of me who wanted to run and cry, but I would not give him the satisfaction. I had done that after every beating from my father or being left to defend myself in some sort of way. "Mia," Alpha Robert gruffly said. My uncles had closed the link, which I didn't even notice. He must have felt my emotions. I looked at Alpha Robert but said nothing. His face held so much. Everything depended on what came out of his mouth. "I'm sorry for what you went through," he said, which squeezed my heart slightly in my chest. How could a fragile thing like a heart feel so heavy at words I had longed to hear? You're right. I wasn't an alpha the pack deserved, he muttered, looking down at his hand on his lap. I never truly thought anyone would cause such violent acts against a child. I knew who he was on about, but I didn't want to know anything about the monster. He didn't need my energy. There are some things I don't know, he said, looking back up at me but looking toward someone. I would like to know what you know. Glancing over to see who he was looking at, Gwen. She gave him a nod, but her eyes went to me and softened. All eyes were on me. I see the pity in their eyes, which breaks me. They don't, Lila murmured, but Alpha Robert interrupted her by speaking. I don't know what to make of my son, he said, which drew Lila and me back to him. I looked back, his eyes on me. He had done nothing like that, and not to you. He never laid a figure on you when you were together. Being young never had to do with it, I said when childhood memories flooded back like a tidal wave. I felt sick, and tears welled in my eyes, but I kept my calm. Lila, being close by, helped. Your son did what he did, and even made it clear he wanted someone else to have. I learned the hard way why. He kissed Chloe in front of me. As soon as he did, I knew there was no way he saw me as a pack member who he could bully and make her pay for what your beta had spread. Wetness coated my cheeks, which made me wipe the tears with my hand. It took remembering when I knew Aiden would never have anything to do with me to break me like a dam. I can't do this anymore, I whispered, moving from the chair and standing. There is more to this. Everyone here will tell you what you need to know. I can't. Tears flow more, and I can't stay in the room anymore. I may have spoken up about what happened to me for the first time and made people aware of what happened. My mom and uncle knew what I wanted to tell them initially, but that was it. Moving quickly, I walked out of the office and walked away. Someone had followed right behind me. I could hear their footsteps, but I didn't bother looking back. Lila stood quiet and said nothing. She knew what I was feeling. I was breaking. I felt a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. People who needed to know, knew, but it was still hard to relive all that again. Just as I got to my room, a hand wrapped around my wrist made me stop. I closed my eyes to show her how broken I was. She turned around and wrapped her arms around me without saying a word. A friend. The person who helped me leave. Sasha. Sasha followed me from the office and said nothing while she kept up with me. She was now holding on to me tight while I let everything out I had to hold on to for so long. All the tears I shed many times overflowed. Her arms held me tight. I couldn't move, and I didn't want to. Emma. The room was silent after my daughter left. I could feel and sense her pain. Everyone in the office could feel my daughter's heartbreak a little, but also relief as the whole abuse that she dealt with came to the surface. It was raw and painful, but it all needed to come out. My eyes lingered on the door but moved toward the man I thought was my friend. He was pale and had many emotions, which we all could feel rolling off him. Alpha Robert looks torn after Mia's outburst. That happened all under my nose, Alpha Robert, Gwen blurted, making me look at my friend. She was furious, just like all of us in the office. I told you something was happening under your nose, but you never listened to me when I told you about it in the office before I left. Looking back at Alpha Robert, whose face seemed to tighten at her words. Did he not even listen to my friend when she said something was happening? I didn't. I should, he muttered, trying to justify everything. That was not going to happen. I let a growl slip, making him look at me in disbelief. Emma, I didn't know. You should have known, I gritted. I know what it is like to be abused by that man. I only had to deal with him, but Mia not only had to suffer at his hands, but also people who were supposed to be her friends. My anger swept through me like a hurricane. Lynx was on the verge of coming out because of the pain she felt coming from our pup and what she had heard. You didn't know what was happening to me either, I said, raising my voice. That monster tortured me, I said. But he loved another. He never wanted me. He wanted her. You know who that was. Maria. Your beloved mate. His eyes widened and tears formed at the mention of his dead mate. He blamed me for not saving her that night, I continued, telling me I should have died instead and not her. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I had no clue what I wanted to do. Alpha Robert was learning more about what was happening behind his back. He needed to know the truth about his best friend and Beta. He needed to realize what kind of monster David indeed was. If he didn't believe Mia, he would believe me. That pack caused not only my suffering but also my daughter's, I said. A hand went on mine. I knew it was Gwen. Gwen saved me back then, and Mia too. Alpha Robert, your ignorance caused problems for your pack, my brother growled. I could sense his anger slipping through, and I knew he had been having trouble controlling his wolf ever since Mia spoke. We all did. I suggest we talk about other things, he said, glaring. The way this is going, I will be more than happy to let your pack suffer, especially knowing my family has suffered enough at the hands of your pack. Alpha Robert stared at him but looked back at me. I am sorry for everything that has happened, he muttered. I was heartbroken because of Maria's death. I knew something was happening between David and her, but I never got proof. At first, I thought it was a friendship they had built by working together. I never thought my best friend and mate would betray me. I felt hurt when my Luna hurt me, and then someone took her away from me before I could deal with it. He was full of sadness. I never knew about his torture on both of you, Emma. I would have stopped it. I mean it. Same with Mia. Part of me wants to believe him. There was no way he knew what was happening between Maria and David. Love blinded him to her, since she wrapped him around her finger whenever we were around. When I reflect on my memories of our friendships with all four of us, I realize that Robert and I ended up alone. David and Maria worked together on a project. As a Luna, she dealt with some of the pack issues, especially regarding the children. Our pack needed a new park for them. Maria wanted to do something special for all the children. She and David worked together. They planned everything and even overlooked the project together. They worked on it for a few weeks. Nothing changed. They would both come home to us. After that project, Maria asked David to help her out more, and that's when the mental abuse started. David would say one thing and he would do another. It would be like being on a roller coaster of emotions, wondering why he would act like this toward me and differ from the next. Nothing shkl happened between them, since I felt nothing. That all started when she was gone. That was when everything changed instantly for us, not just as mates, but also as a family. It all went downhill after that. What has happened to my sister's mate? My brother said, pulling me back from my thoughts. The mere mention of my mate had my stomach twisted in knots. I looked at him and frowned. Mate was not David, not anymore. Alpha Robert looked at him and stared before he spoke. I won't discuss that. His eyes moved from my brother's to mine. You don't need to know what he... A low growl rumbled throughout the office. Talk to me, Alpha. My brother's voice echoed off the walls, making them shake slightly. I had seen it be worse than this, especially when I came here and he had to see what that man did to his sister. That was the hardest day of my life, telling my family what he had done and why I had to leave my child behind. Alpha Robert looked at him and glared. I am at your request, he said, his face hardened. I wouldn't have come here if it wasn't because of Emma. My brother said nothing. This topic needs to change from me to a more pressing matter. Do you know you have traitors in your pack? I asked, making Alpha Robert look at me. This was why he was here. Not only for me, but also for Mia. We have something he wants, and he needs to know. We needed to work together to stop what was happening. These people were after packs. What is better than teaming up? But everything needed to be out in the open. Alpha Robert needed to know what had happened between Mia and me, and now he did. He needed to know about the people he had let into his pack. I wonder if he will believe us. Probably not, Lynx mumbled, but I ignored her. She lost his respect after he thought Mia deserved what she got. If it wasn't for Mia stopping us, I thought Lynx would have gutted Robert immediately. There was no telling what she would have done to protect her pup. Could you tell me what is going on, please? Alpha Robert asked while I shook my thoughts away and looked back at him. I want to know everything. And what traitors are you on about? Emma, Alpha Sam glared at him. I knew I had to defuse whatever was going on with my brother. There was time and place for this. We had to work together to take out the Beta family. Tell him, Sam, I said through the mind link. We will need his help when we fight them, but we also need to know what he knows. I could feel my brother's anger. That bastard blamed Mia, he gritted. He knew something was wrong. You can tell by the look on his face. I am trying to keep calm, but Bo has other ideas, he said. Knowing his wolf, Bo, he wanted to kill the man. His wolf hates it when he hears bullies or any harm to children, and there is no expectation when it comes to his niece. Ever since Mia came here, he had been more protective. All people have, even some pack members. I said nothing and looked at him. We need to do this for Mia, I said, keeping my eyes on him. You need to be the alpha, not uncle here. Sam looked at me, his eyes darkened. He knew I was right. Right now, I bet he wanted our parents here, since they would have more pull with Alpha Robert since being part of the council. But he knew it couldn't happen since Mia hadn't met them yet. She was supposed to, but ever since, we learned more about the pack's involvement with Mia's treatment there. That didn't include what we learned about the Beta family and their involvement. Sam let out a sigh. You're right. He closed the mind link and looked toward Alpha Robert. Sam closed the mind link and looked at Alpha Robert, giving him a hard look, a look I knew all too well. He wasn't going to be subtle in the slightest. The man needed to know it all, even if it meant him realizing that he had not only let Mia and me down, but also the fall of his pack. We came to learn that a family from the Midnight Pack has been terrorizing through packs, Sam said, which made Alpha Robert tense. There was something in there, but I couldn't place what. They killed their Alpha after killing his Luna, their child. They took over and made that pack suffer, taking all their money, prisoning pack members who went against them. Sam looked at him with a stern look. I knew the rest of this story would take more control of him and Bo, but Alpha Robert needed to know it all. The council enlisted me to deal with the matter with Alpha Marcus. We thought we had killed them all, but when my niece got here, she explained they had gained 3 new pack members, one of them being that hideous girl, Chloe. My eyes went to Alpha Robert. He looked blankly at my brother. Part of me wanted to move and shake the man to hear what was being said when my brother spoke again. You also took her mother and sister in, he said with a hard look. Didn't you think it was strange to take 3 women in like you did, or was you... They told me they needed protection? Alpha Robert blurted out, cutting off my brother. The look on my brother's face was something I also knew all too well. He was pissed, but someone else spoke, which made me look at her. Sam's mate, Sadie. She has become my sister since he came back with her. I knew there was more to her story, and she mentioned she would bring it up when it was right, and it seemed today was the time. Alpha Robert, the 3 of them are from my old pack, the Midnight Pack, Luna Sadie said. Alpha Robert looked at her with wide eyes and turned to look at Alpha Sam, who glared at him. Sam knew he wanted to ask more, but he shook his head and looked toward his mate, giving her hand a reassurance squeeze for her to continue. Sam wants Luna Sadie to tell him what she knows. There was more I didn't know, which we all needed to know. The Beta who killed the Alpha and took over the pack mated with Josephine, she said, keeping her eyes on Alpha Robert. All of their children are as evil as their parents. There are 3 altogether, 2 boys and 1 girl, Chloe. My eyes went to Alpha Robert, who seemed to question something, but Sadie beat him. Madeline, the Alpha's daughter, was kept away from us. We didn't know where they were keeping her. We only knew they wanted one of their sons to mate with her. Madeline cleared up that part when she was in the office yesterday. I was a pack member who was kept in one place most of the time, she gritted. It was surprising to see followers who believed their words of power, but most of the pack were prisoners for wanting out. No one was safe there. Men wanted women, even if they had mates. I was lucky to find my mate, she said, looking at my brother. Sam gave her a reassuring smile. When the council came, Josephine escaped with her children while I killed the Beta, Sam said. We even burned his body to make sure he was dead. Sam looked at him and realized something. It looks like Josephine and Chloe made their way to your pack for a new start, he said and frowned. But with everything that has happened to my niece, I think they are after the Alpha position and pack to take over. Try to claim what they lost from someone else. Back to what they did to my back, Sadie murmured. They will do anything to get what they can and make it all about them. Make them be a powerful family, like back in the pack. Alpha Robert stares back at my brother and Sadie, but sighs. When Josephine, Madeline, and Chloe came to the pack, they told Beta David and me that when we spotted them on the border, they were being hunted by rogues. They wanted to become pack members and would help us in any shape or form. They were the only ones who spoke, he said. Madeline was quiet the entire time. She looked scared and didn't even look at us. You didn't think it was weird? I asked, making him look at me and shake his head. His eyes lingered on me momentarily before returning to look at my brother and Sadie. What did you say when they mentioned they were being hunted by rogues? My brother asked. I agree, since David told me they might help us with the rogue problem we had, he said. There was something clearly bothering him. The thing is, rogues never followed them to the parkland after they arrived. They caught them near the border, but they never made any entry of coming in. Whenever a warrior or guard spotted one and notified us, they disappeared by the time they looked back again. Emma. Alpha Robert stopped for a moment and let out a frustrated sigh. The rogues never came onto the packlands, he said, which made me tense. That part was weird. No rogues would leave a packland unless someone were behind it. Alpha Robert continued, pulling me from my thoughts. They only came to the territory, looking or waiting for someone. There was some tension, but even confusion in the air. Why would they? Alpha Sam muttered, but Alpha Robert stopped him. I reached out to you for help, since I knew there was more to it. The guards came to me and mentioned what had been happening. I had someone on the outside to help. That's what I asked for, a representative from your pack to investigate. His eyes went to the person sitting next to me, Gwen, and he gave her a small smile. I thought one had gotten into the pack when I wasn't in the best frame of mind. I needed someone on the outside to figure out whether it was a pack member or something else and to see if it was my imagination. Alpha Robert stared for a moment and then looked toward Alpha Sam. I didn't want my pack members to think I was losing my mind. I needed help, and I was grateful for your assistance. He looked at Gwen again and gave her a nod. Thank you again for looking into it. You found more out when you were there than I ever could. Playing devil's advocate was hard as an alpha, especially when something was happening within the pack. I looked toward Gwen, whose face hardened. Can I ask why you are always in your office or room? He gave her a nod, keeping his eyes on her. This was something that needed to be addressed. I only stayed in the office because I knew no one would come in unless it were important. Over the years, I let my grief for Maria consume me until something clicked inside. I needed to be more of an alpha. After Josephine and her family came, I knew I couldn't hide anymore, not with new pack members coming to live. So I slowly made more effort to come out. It was only for food, showing my face and sitting at the table. Adian slowly appreciated what I was doing, even asking for us to go for a run. There was a slight smile pulling his lips, something of a memory that formed. I did more with him, only small amounts. When days were hard, I stayed in the office and made known I was working, which was not even a lie to them. I kept busy with paperwork and learning more, but something strange happened. The atmosphere in the room became stale, and his face hardened. During my time in the office and when Josephine came to the pack, she would appear out of nowhere, trying to give me tender care, either by placing her hand on mine or even staying with me to comfort me. I ignored her attempts. I had no interest in her, not in any romantic form. Anger radiated from him as he continued, I have never taken another woman to my bed after Maria except once after a few drinks, but I felt guilty afterward. I stopped it before it could even start. But with Josephine, she was slowly giving subtle hints about bedding me. I never liked her like that. She is not my type, and honestly, I would return to my office more toward the end to get away from her. Her scent was off. It would make me sick, something I never thought about until Gwen came to stay for a few days. Alpha Robert stopped momentarily, trying to control his anger, but nothing seemed to work. There was something else I noticed. I loved walking around the pack house at night, especially when I couldn't sleep, since sleep was rare. He looked at me with a hint of worry, but he continued. I walked toward the beta's floor and was about to move when I saw David's open and Chloe leave his room one night. My stomach dropped while my wolf growled. Alpha Robert continued. not noticing the mental toll this was taking on me. She looked like she stayed with him. I have only seen her leave, not much to the imagination on clothes either. That prick slept with someone Mia's age, and the one who had caused all this torment to her in the first place. Closing my eyes, I tried to push everything I was feeling. Over the years, I felt pain even when I was in the pack. I wasn't stupid. I knew what he was doing and what he was doing with others. I felt every pain of him sleeping with women. Anger swipes in, making my eyes fly open and look at him. "I am sorry, Emma," he murmured, then looked at Alpha Sam with something else in place. "Now that is my son's mate." He let a low growl slip past his lips. "Chloe is not his mate," a voice came from the door. We all looked to see Madeline standing there, looking between us. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her face contorted slightly like a naughty girl entering the principal's office when they were in trouble. Her eyes locked on with my brother's as her bottom lip trembled. "I am sorry, Alpha Sam," she said, while playing with her hands in front of her. "I knocked, but no one answered. I thought I would come to tell you. We came back early and were looking for Mia." My brother's face was blank, probably wondering if she was telling the truth. Did she knock on the door? In her defense, we were all into discovering the truth about what was happening. "Madeline," Alpha Robert whispered, which made me look at him. His face had gotten whiter, but his eyes were glued to hers. "We forgot this wasn't meant to happen," Alpha Robert and Madeline meeting. "We wanted to find out first and decide what would happen next when we knew the truth." I looked at my brother, who gave me a knowing look, just like we did as kids, when we knew something was up or even agreed with something. "Madeline, is that really you?" Alpha Robert whispered, glancing around at us in the room to make sure he wasn't seeing things. "Where is Alpha Tristan?" His words echoed around the office, but my focus went to Madeline, who was on the verge of crying. "He's dead. Josephine and her sons killed his pack and him. I escaped with a guard, but he went to lead them onto another trail, away from me." Her words failed her as her tears escaped. My heart sank for her. Losing a mate was one thing no wolf would ever want, not in her condition. "I am so sorry about that. He was a good man." My brother cleared his throat, causing Alpha Robert and Madeline to look at him. "When you came here, you mentioned Adian's not Chloe's mate. What do you mean by that?" Madeline stared at us while more tears flowed. Something was clearly amiss with what she had told us yesterday with Mia. She cleared her throat, but it barely came out in a whisper when she spoke. "Chloe already has a mate." The entire office fell silent by her words. "Emma, did she say Chloe had a mate? Then why was she seducing men, knowing you have the one the moon goddess chose for you?" This was so unhinged, even for my wolf to hear. "What do you mean, Madeline?" my brother asked, confusion clearly written on his face, just like most of us. Madeline looked to the floor and then back at him. "She has a mate. She and her mate have some weird mate bond, though. They like to sleep around and hurt one another. It is like a game to them to see who can cause more harm," she said with a hint of disgust. "The worst part is they always end up together after tormenting and torturing each other." "That is so wrong on so many levels," Gwen muttered. "Why play such heinous games like that with their wolves? It's unheard of." Madeline said nothing. She looked more annoyed than anything. My wolf came close and stared at her. "She's scared." I said nothing, knowing she had left that part of our conversation. That was one vital thing we needed to know, even if it was disturbing. Gwen was right. No wolf would act like that. It had to be their human side, being like that. "Many wolves can be as deranged as their humans," my wolf murmured, making me look back at her with wide eyes. "You knew this, and you never told me," I muttered, which only made my wolf roll her eyes at me before she continued. "Moon Goddess always states there are always a few bad eggs, and we must be wary of them. Clearly, this girl and her mate were the ones we needed to watch, even her mother, too." That part was true. Josephine seemed to not care about any of this, even trying to go after Alpha Robert. I looked back and noticed a few were talking to their wolves. My eyes went to Madeline, who seemed to stare at Alpha Robert, who seemed to be in his little world. I wonder if she knew he was coming here. No one would have slipped up, but we still didn't know if she was to be trusted. "Did you know Alpha Robert was coming here?" I asked, suddenly causing a few people to look between us. Madeline looked back at me but shook her head. I didn't know until I came to the door. I could smell his scent by the door. I think pregnancy has heightened my senses, she said. Ah, I remember them. It used to cause problems when someone didn't have a bath around here, and a few of the pack members and their wolves enjoyed doing it on time. They thought they didn't have to, since they were wolves. My wolf groaned while agreeing with me. Don't remind me. Keeping my eyes on her, I knew she needed a gentle touch. I smiled at her, moved to the side, away from Gwen, and patted the seat between us. Come sit. Madeline walked over to me and smiled. I looked over at my friend, who seemed to smile at her. Madeline sat while looking around the room until she came to me again. Where is Mia? She left, Alpha Sam said, making us look at him. She wanted answers to what happened to her in her old pack and to clear up some things that Alpha Robert didn't know about. My brother's eyes went to Alpha Robert and then back to us again. He leaned back in his seat and sighed. I think we need to devise a plan for what to do about Josephine and Chloe. We must discover their endgame and what they want from us all. Everyone nodded, but no one said a word. When Gwen spoke, we all thought, I know how we can lure them into a trap. Like what? I asked, wondering where she was going with all this. Gwen moved forward, gaining everyone's attention, and told us what she thought. Well, they seem to want to either be looking for something or trying to take over Alpha Robert's pack. We all nodded, knowing that part was true, until she continued. Why not set up a trap there? They wouldn't expect another pack to be helping him, especially not our pack. There was silence while her eyes moved between us. They believe taking out Alpha Robert's pack will make them powerful, or you could lure us to them instead, I said, knowing where she was going with this. Gwen frowned and shook their head. No, they won't, she said, looking hopeful. They don't know Alpha Robert is here, right? She looked at him while he gave her a nod of agreement. Gwen looked at me, then at my brother. No one knows about this meeting. We could plan to visit the pack with a few wolves and see what happens. Maybe state you are offering training or something. We do it unexpectedly, not letting anyone know until it's too late. Gwen, that sounds stupid, I said, but Alpha Sam cut me off before I could finish my sentence. Sis, I think she is onto something. My brother turned to Alpha Robert. Were Chloe and Josephine there when you left? Alpha Robert thought for a moment and shrugged. Only Chloe, I believe. We haven't seen Josephine for a while. She told me a few days ago that she needed to look for something in town and would be back in a few days. She was also meeting a friend. That was convenient. She must have been seeing some rogues, especially with what we know now. We could set a trap at Alpha Roberts' pack when she comes back, Alpha Sam said, making me arch my eyebrows at him. Knowing that look he had, it was something my father would use when he was about to take someone down, and Sam wore that same look. What do you have in mind, brother? I asked. His face was blank, and I knew he was forming his plan. After a moment, his lips curled up into a stupid smirk, like he did when he was a kid, when he would prank me or if he had something evil in mind. I think I got a plan that will eliminate them, but we will wait for Josephine to return to the pack, he said, looking toward Alpha Robert. Alpha RP Bert can let us know when she is back, and once she is back, Alpha Robert will notify me, and we can send some members of ours to him to help him train his pack. That's what I want her to believe. She would have no control over what happens, and Chloe must be too busy to realize what is happening. Alpha Robert stared at him before the corners of his lips twitched. He seemed on board with my brother's idea, while my brother continued, I'm not going to discuss it anymore, but we have a baseline for what we can plan. We will meet in a few days. My brother looked at Alpha Robert. You need a secure phone line in place for us to communicate with you. Once we establish who is dependable, we will decide who will be part of your group. Alpha Robert nodded and looked at us before he spoke again. As much as I need to hear the plan, I should be getting back to my pack and don't want them to have any inkling I was here. My brother nodded. That's true. We can make the plan better when Mia is involved too. The mere mention of my daughter's name causes Alpha Robert to wince. He quickly recovered and looked at my brother. She might not want to help, Alpha Robert mentioned, but my brother shook his head and stopped him. She will. She will want to face her bullies. I knew where my brother was going with this, but Mia might want nothing to do with this pack after everything that had happened to her, and I wouldn't blame her. There was another problem that neither Alpha had thought about. What happened with David? I asked, looking between them both. He was the one who caused both Mia and my injuries. Alpha Robert's body tensed but relaxed when he looked at me. He's in rehab in the nearby village since the fire. He had drunk himself stupid and needed help with his drinking. Alpha Robert stopped and looked at me momentarily before he stunned me with his next words. He mainly wanted help with his violent ways. That was weird even to hear. He wants to get better. There was no more hope on my end. He ruined me and tortured me, and there was no going back. Suddenly, I felt Madeline tense, which made me look back at her with concern. What's wrong? Her face goes pale, and she looks back at me. I didn't know about the abuse, but I think Chloe did. What do you mean? I asked her, but then something clicked. She slept with David. If he were drunk, he would have told her. Why would she know? Gwen asked, making me realize she was looking at me. Before I could tell her, a light bulb went off in her head. What? Madeline spluttered, looking between us. What did she do? That little slept with David. Knowing what he was like, he probably blabbed to her about what he did to Mia, which would explain the meetings she was getting. She could have made something up to him, making her out to be the victim or something, and he, being the Argonaut ass, he would think he was her knight in shining armor, beating his daughter for what she did. My stomach flips more while my mind goes over her words again. I think Chloe wanted David to hurt Mia more, Alpha Robert muttered, taking everything Gwen said. He would turn up to the pack after he had been home for a while. Seeing Mia as weak, Chloe must have thought she would stay hidden, but she didn't, which would fuel her rage more. I hate her, Madeline murmured under her breath, for what she and Josephine have done, but also for Mia's torment. No one should go through all that. The room was silent until my brother cleared his throat, making us all look at him. As long as that man is in rehab and locked up, we can still advance our plans. His eyes went to Alpha Robert. I will see you out the back way. No packs will be around since it's training. Alpha Robert nodded, but my heart felt heavy with everything we learned today. Sis, why don't you and Madeline find Mia? He said, making me look at him. With the sudden urge to see my daughter, I exited my seat and held my hand to Madeline, who happily took it. Let's find Mia. My wolf howled, wanting to see our pup. Everything was a mess, but we needed to get back to the bottom of it quickly. I was more about my daughter than anything now, and knowing people would make her suffer to get close to someone was even more disheartening. Alpha Robert, Alpha Sam and Luna Sadie were the only ones left when everyone departed. My thoughts spun, trying to make sense of everything said and seen. The presence of Emma and Madeline among the pack directly resulted from my actions, a fact that weighed heavily on my conscience. Emma was a dear friend of mine. Even when she was mated to David, we still hung out until my Maria was killed. I had lost myself entirely and failed to be the alpha everyone deserved. Guilt consumed me, especially after hearing what Mia and Emma had gone through. Today's conversation revealed to me that cruel people lived in my pack. Coming here was an eye-opener, especially hearing about the involvement of my son and his part in Mia's abuse. That's what it was, abuse. Rage was all I could feel toward my only son. How could he do such a thing? When they were young, Mia and Adian were inseparable. They did everything together. Even when Maria was killed, Mia looked after him. Despite the mess I was in, Aiden and Mia would be huddled in the corner. Alpha Robert, Alpha Sam said, pulling me back. My eyes met his. Luna Sadie pressed a kiss to his head and walked away, heading out through the door. Why would she leave now? I kept my eyes on Alpha Sam, who had a dark demeanor now. There is one thing I want to talk to you about alone. I stared at him, wondering what he wanted to talk about. Alpha Sam leaned in his chair and spoke. You, son, what are you going to do about him? That was the million-dollar question that was running through my mind. My wolf was pacing, angry at everything he had heard. Everything was due to two women who were causing problems with my pack. Alpha, I have no clue, I gritted, cutting him off. Staring at him, I let out a breath and continued. One thing is for certain, I need to talk to him. Get to the point of why he has been acting like this. Alpha Sam stared at him, his face hardened. He needs to realize what he has done, he said, moving from his chair and standing while pinning me with a glare. You need to. I know what I need to do, I growled, standing. Our auras were let out, clashing with one another. I knew I had to deal with Aiden and do it my way. Closing my eyes, I stared back at my wolf, willing for him to calm down. After a few moments, I opened my eyes and stared back at Alpha Sam, who seemed to be doing the same. Aiden will be punished for what he did, I assure you. My voice echoed around the office like a ticking time bomb. Keeping my eyes focused away and toward the window, realizing I needed to leave soon before my pack wondered where I was. I had blocked all pack members from contacting me through MindLink. Don't tell him Mia is alive. His words hung heavy in the air while he continued. He doesn't deserve to know. No one in your pack needs to either, not after what she has been through. I gave a nod, knowing he was right. Everyone in my pack had it in for Mia. I know I did nothing about it then, but I can now. Letting out a sigh and moved away from the chair but stopped. Looking over my shoulder, I looked back at Alpha Sam. I know I messed up as an alpha. I lost my Luna, which is hard, but it was no excuse not to know what was happening with my pack. Alpha Sam stared at me, but I continued. Leaving here now, I will deal with Aiden and all Mia's bullies. I promise you, they will never find out Mia is alive. There will be major changes within my pack, you can guarantee. I know it is a little too late to do this, I said, but Alpha Sam shook his head and stopped me. No one here knows what it is like to lose a mate, he said, which makes me tense. It must have been hard, especially on your wolf. I am sorry, Robert, for what you went through. Tears appeared behind my eyes. I have not once had another alpha say such words to me. Knowing my voice would show emotion, I kept my mouth zipped until I looked away. I had lost my wolf due to what happened, I whispered, knowing this would come as a shock to him. The books have never written about such a thing happening, but it occurred to me. No one knew, not even my pack doctors. It was a main reason why I kept out of sight and not letting pack members know. If it got out that I was weak and without a wolf, anyone could challenge me for my title, whether I had Aiden or not. My wolf came back the night Mia left. That explains why you hid, he murmured, making me look back at him. His face softened. My wolf came back the night of the fire, I said, turning slightly. No one in my pack knows this. I had to keep my title safe, but also grieving was harder on me. Alpha Sam stared but moved his head to the side. Did you wolf explain why he left? I gave him a nod. Grieve of losing our mate, but I stopped myself. If I told him the rest, Emma's words about our mates were valid, and I still didn't want to admit they were true. Enough said, Alpha Sam mumbled, making my thoughts race. I knew I needed to leave since I had to return to my pack before Aiden sent someone to look for me. I will take my leave, I said, placing my hand on the door, but looked over at him. Please don't bring up what we spoke here just now. I will deny it if you do. Alpha Sam gave a nod while his lips twitched at the corners. You have my word. We have a common enemy that needs to be dealt with. Working together is all we need to do. After this, we will go our separate ways. I said nothing, knowing there was no point in establishing anything with him about our future, since what happened to his sister and niece were still raw. All this was still raw after this meeting. Pulling open the door, I headed out and through the back way. Alpha Sam came and got me before everyone arrived for the meeting. Walking and climbing into the car, I drove away without looking back. My mind raced over everything that had happened this morning. Movement in my head indicated my wolf was close, but I said nothing to him. We were still trying to get back into the groove of being back together. The big part of him leaving was hard to hear when he told me. I thought he was lying, but it was all confirmed by Emma. My wolf could sense a change in Maria when she was with David. He couldn't figure out what, but she seemed happier. I never considered it since David was my best friend and always talked about Emma. The projects were stuff to do with her Luna duties. It started out helping with putting decorations up or something small. Over a few weeks, things changed when she seemed to be happier seeing David than being with me. My wolf wanted to confront her, but I was against it. When she passed, we were too far gone to even talk to one another, and then he disappeared on me. Returning to how we were before will take time, but we can salvage it. The only thing that was on my mind was dealing with my son. The son I raised never to harm a woman who should have respect for his mate. Then there were the issues surrounding Josephine and Chloe. I could not tell Aiden about any of this. I needed to prioritize my thoughts, and the first thing was to make sure I punished everyone involved in Mia's torment, including my son. I may have been an absent alpha and father, but now I will show him what it is like to be both. He won't like what I will have in store for them. MIA. After a few hours, I cried in Sasha's arms when we got to my room, and eventually, after crying so much, I fell asleep. My eyes were heavy from being swollen, but as I looked ahead and stared at Sasha, I realized she must have been lying with me on the bed when I fell asleep. I could tell she never left my side. Looking back in my head, I see Lyra sleeping soundly. She tried to soothe me, but even she was overthinking and upset. She was primarily angry about what had happened and what she learned. I looked back at my friend to see her eyes were closed. I slowly sat up in bed, which caused Sasha to stir next to me. Her eyes flew open, and she looked at me. A small smile appeared on her lips. "How are you feeling now?" That was a loaded question, even to me. How was I feeling? There were too many things going on in my head. I'm okay. I never thought I could cry so much. That part was genuine. Only when the pain was so bad that it would make me pass out. Shaking my head, I looked at her again. As for what was said, I don't know, but expressing everything openly felt good. To make Alpha Robert hear what was going on and even put him in his place. Sasha nodded and moved up. We both leaned against my headboard when she spoke. "I am happy though," she said, which raised my eyebrows while I felt slightly confused. She let out a laugh and shook her head. "Nothing bad. For years you have held everything in and suffered because of what happened. It must have been good to get it off your chest like you did, telling him what happened, making him realize his mistakes." I stared at her, knowing she was right. I felt like some weight had come off my shoulders from telling Alpha Robert all that. There was nothing else to be said. But I do have to admit, I hated hearing everything that you spewed out to that Alpha. Sometimes I thought Alpha Sam would have jumped over his desk to hit the man for letting it all unfold like he did. Even your mother wanted his head, which was scary since she is so calm. The thought of my mother losing her crap made me wonder if she would have done something. "Mama Wolf would have," Lyra said, making me look back at her as she yawned. Once she was done, she looked at me. She wanted his head, but she had to control her wolf and her anger too. "It was hard for everyone to listen to," she said, her head to the side. "Even for me. I didn't realize how bad it was. You blocked me from some of it and even lied to me." "I'm sorry," I whispered, looking away. "I didn't want you to suffer because of Mia. Look at me." I did as she asked and looked back at her. Her eyes met mine and softened. "You shouldn't have had to block me. I could have helped or even taken some of the pain for you." A lone tear slides down my cheek. Her love ripples through me and helps me calm slightly when I feel an arm on mine. Looking away from Lyra, I glanced back at Sasha, who seemed concerned. "Mia, are you okay? Is something wrong with Lyra?" I shook my head and leaned back on the headboard, darting my eyes from her. I stared ahead. "We're okay." Lyra was telling me her thoughts. I used to block her in some parts, at least when it happened. She was stunned to know most of it. Sasha said nothing, letting my words linger around us until she sighed. It must have been hard for her to hear all that. I gave her a nod, but she wasn't don't. "Our wolves are truly magnificent creatures, especially to us. They're humans." That was true. "I bet it also felt good to tell someone in that pack what truly happened to you." I knew where she was going with this, and it felt amazing to get it all out of my system, even if Alpha Robert should have had some clue what was happening. "I think the Alpha had some other thing going," Lyra muttered, making me look back at her as she continued. "His wolf. He felt unhinged, as though he had been locked away for ages. I could always feel him close by, but getting a read on him was hard." "That was weird. Why would his wolf act like that?" "You never told me Aiden did one of those scars," Sasha asked, making her body tense at her words. I told her many were from my father, which was true, but some were from Chloe and others. That one was Aiden's finest piece, which I will never forget. I let out a sigh, knowing she needed answers. I didn't tell her initially, since I was learning to trust her. It was the first thing he ever did to me, I said, leaning back and turning to look at her. I remember it like it was yesterday. It happened one afternoon after a beating. When he did that, he caused Lyra to come forward slightly, but I pushed her back and blocked her so she wouldn't feel anything else. Sasha's eyes widened, which made me look away from her. I kept my eyes on the door, trying to keep my emotions in check as I continued. Chloe started it, but Aiden finished it. All our so-called friends were near to them. I think Chloe wanted to make sure she had Aiden where she wanted him and the others. What do you mean? It was like she wanted to keep him for herself and the other. She never let him hurt me after that, but only just made him watch. She always made sure Darren and Lee were always around too. Sarah only showed up when bothered to be in school. Anger swirled around me. Talking about all this wasn't helping. I needed to change the subject or do something. Right on cue, my stomach growls, and Sasha and I look at one another, the corners of our lips curled up, and we both laughed. "You're hungry, I take it," she said once she calmed down. I gave her a nod and let out a breath, but let my eyes wander over to the clock. We had been in the room for 3 hours. Did anyone come up to see me? "Your mum and Madeline came up," Sasha murmured, making me look at her. She gave me a knowing look. "They were worried about you. I let your mum in to see you, but when she realized you were asleep, she told me to let her know." Sasha looked at the clock and smiled. "It's dinner. Maybe we could go down and see everyone in the hall, grab some food, and then train afterward." I liked that idea. Even training seemed better than nothing. We could get all this anger out on that. There was silence, which made me look at Sasha, who was wearing a blank expression. She was mind-linking with someone. After a few moments, Sasha looked back and smiled. "Everyone is finished in the office, and Alpha Robert has even left. They made a plan, which Auntie Gwen says took 3 hours to create." My eyes widened. A plan? What plan? "They will tell us later," Sasha said, acting like a mind reader again. "Shall we head to the hall to have some food?" My stomach growled in agreement with her before words could even agree, making us laugh again. Once we both calm down, we get out of bed and feel refreshed by straightening our clothes in the mirror before heading back downstairs.